Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I welcome both my committee but also all members who aren't part of that committee but have turned up today to do some scrutinising, so thank you for coming. I'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. In terms of the order of service, so to speak, it's going to be driven by the slides that accompany it, and slides 1 to 7 will be led by Councillor Snell with questions from the floor. Slides 8 to 14 will be led by the individual portfolio holders, and after each portfolio holder has spoken, I will then go to the chairs and vice chairs of the committee that corresponds to their portfolio and other members of the committee. Slide 15 and 16 also will be led by Councillor Snell, and that will be item 4. Item 5 corresponds to slides 17 to 19, as item 6 corresponds to 20 to 23. Item 7 corresponds to slide 25, and item 8 corresponds to slide 26. And if anyone doesn't behave themselves tonight, I'll ask you to repeat back everything I've just said. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Could I ask Democratic Services to tell us who the apologies are, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Duffin, Massey and Worrell.
Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Gledhill. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 2, urgent business. I've not agreed to the inclusion of any urgent business. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay. So, item number 4, I'm going to invite Councillor Snell to lead us through slides 1 to 7 and then the questions to follow. Councillor Snell.
That's better. Thank you, Chair. Little issue with the microphone there. Okay, so we're going to go through the slides as they appear up on the screen, and hopefully you've all got a copy of these. So, Jenny, if we go to page 1, you haven't got them. Well, they'll be on the screen behind you, and I'll go through them all anyway. Okay, so as the Chair just alluded to, we're going to go through 5 papers tonight. We're going to do the Revenue Budget Savings 2024-25 report, the Revenue Budget 2024-25 report, the Medium-Term Financial Strategy, the Capital Programme and the HRA Business Plan. Next slide, please, Jenny. So, members are asked to act as a critical friend in objectively assessing the strengths and weaknesses of the proposals. You will be able to ask members or directors for any explanation or information needed to better understand the proposals. You can consider the community and equality impact assessments, consider the summaries of the public engagement comments, make recommendations to officers to improve proposals, provide commentary and recommendations, including any alternative options to Cabinet to consider when making decisions. And we will get a report in Cabinet of that on the 21st of February 2024 to consider taking these forward that weren't approved in January 2024. Next slide, please, Jenny. Okay, so we go to...
Sorry, Councillor Snell, just before you carry on, just going to ask if the camera on us is removed, because members won't be able to see the whole of the slide otherwise. I'll just leave. If you just hold on just one moment, please, Councillor, if that's okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Chair. So we're going to the 2024-25 savings proposals. So if you remember, we discussed £11.28 million worth of these in January. So what we're discussing today is the 6.923 million that we didn't discuss that time, and the business cases were then being consulted on. So as you can see from the top lines there, we've got to 18.204 million in savings. Now, there has been some movement in those, as you'll see from the second set of charges. which drops the actual council down to 16.97. And the next tranche of figures is the proposed mitigation, which comes to 1.303 million. That brings that back up to 18.2. If anybody wants to, do we want to go through questions on that page now, or do we want to get to the end and ask questions afterwards, Chair?
If it's okay, Councillor, if we could just do your block of slides to slide 7, then we'll take questions from the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we talk about the business case changes. So the contact management was originally 977,000 in year 1. Now there's 457,000 deferred to year 2. There's still significant work being conducted to fully assess the implementation plan. The revised savings are anticipated to be 520,000, with transformation costs of around 1.53 million. The workforce planning and agency spend was originally 2,530,000. This was reduced by 471k after further work was conducted. The savings revised to 2,059k. Rent reviews, originally 650,000. This saving was reduced by 468,000 after additional due diligence was conducted for the 23-24 income, and the anticipated property asset disposals impact was remodelled. The proposed mitigation for the reductions are: increase the review of children's CHC cases to secure appropriate health to 250k from 100k. Increase the home to school transport saving to 395k from 145k. Benefit of the revised council tax programme, Regeneration and Levelling Up Regulations 2023, £100,000 is proposed. As a reduction in the Treasury lending fee budget following the divestment of investments, which is 300,000. Increase the benefit from the new business rates pooling arrangement to 503,000. So we then get to the next slide, please, Jenny, which is the savings proposals on the investment. And these, the revenue proposals do require a level of capital and revenue transformation costs. These are provisionally detailed on the slide for the £6.9 million business cases. And as we can see there, we've got contact management of 1.53 million and home to school transport of 20,000. Next slide, please, Jenny. So the next slide, that's the savings proposal summary. So as you can see there, as listed by department, the savings proposals for 2024-25, totalling the 6.919 million that we're talking about now. So beyond this, I shall be going to the different portfolio holders to explain their different departments. But up to that point, that's me for now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Snell. Has anyone indicated? Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you, Councillor Kerrin. Just before I start, I'd just like to try and be helpful, which I'm sure everyone's going to be, she isn't. The fees and charges paperwork that we've seen, I think, it may just be me, is extremely confusing, because you have a number of fees and charges with the word removed by them. You have another number of them where there is no change. I would like the narrative against each of those. That's where it's been removed. Has it just been removed, or has it been moved to somewhere else? Where there is no change, why is there no change? I'll give you, for instance, Averley Village Hall. The rental on that is staying the same as it was last year. However, if you look at the Thameside Theatre, I believe they're proposing on that going up by 7%. Really doesn't sound particularly fair. So I would like, and if we could have the papers, I don't know, I'll leave it to you, but I think it's very difficult for us to make any comments on the fees and charges where we really haven't got any narrative on them. That's my first point.
And can I just say I agree with you with that, and I've already asked Democratic Services to work with the officers who are responsible for that to provide the narratives for it at the earliest possible convenience.
Perfect, that's really helpful.
Carry on, Councillor.
Thank you. So, Councillor Snell, in the expectation of achieving £18.2 million saving in the year, there is a high probability when you're looking at the current risk analysis and currently where you are, which we saw the performance on there, most of them being amber, that we will not receive or manage to achieve 18.2. In fact, I don't believe there are actually any councils that have achieved 100% in their savings. So, for me, I'm surprised that we've gone 18.2 and in effect it looks like we've worked backwards rather than trying to see what else can we do. So if you could have identified 22, 23 million, there is a more likelihood of you hitting that magic number of the 18.2. And it's really, obviously there's still a number of business cases outstanding. We know if we look at the contact management being one that's now been reduced for next year from 971,000 to 520, looking at a £1.5 million investment, I don't believe there's enough work that's been done that actually will probably get off the ground to give you anything like a full year's equivalent, which is probably why you've taken some down. And when we look at PwC that came in at a cost of about 900,000 with the original HR one that was disregarded back in November, nothing still has come forward in what that replacement is going to be. And I think that was a potential saving of about 600,000. Talking about
Councillor Morris, can I let Councillor Snell answer those points first, and
Yes.
then I'll come back to you.
I haven't got many more,
I should have said at the beginning, I'm going to allow threads of questions like it is in a normal committee, so I will definitely come back to you. And also, there's no requirement to stand, because we may be in the chamber, but we're acting as a committee, so you make yourself comfortable, Councillor. Councillor Snell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not actually sure there was a question there so much. Basically, if I read you right, you basically say that you don't think we can make the savings and that 18.2 million is not ambitious enough? Is that your point?
Yeah, and it's you know, if we're looking to save 18.2, in the best will in the world, that has to be 100%, and that is with the full year equivalents. We can see some movement. We've seen there's still a number of business cases that aren't yet entrenched. So I'm surprised, and I want to know what your thoughts are on how we are going to ensure that we have got enough mitigation to enable us to say that you've landed that figure.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's
What
clarified
I'll say-
what Councillor's asking.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, so what I would say is that bearing in mind the size of the authority, actually we considered 18.2 million to be an extremely challenging target, and that has indeed proven to be the case. So the idea that we could go to a higher target and try and hit that, we were trying to be realistic. You know, and anybody could state, well, you know, let's save £25 million, when that is just totally unrealistic. Saving 18.2 is difficult. And as you can see from the figures, getting there isn't easy. We're not going to pretend it is, because it isn't. And as you can see, some of the business cases, we've had to reduce them for year one, and the savings are going to come back in year two. But therefore, we've had to mitigate those, and the mitigation measures are shown on that paper as well. So, yeah, it's challenging. It's very challenging, but we do believe we can make it. Yes, things are going to slip inside a little bit, but we've so far been able to find the mitigation to cover that. In terms of a mitigation fund, we do have a mitigation fund. I think it's about 6.5 million from memory. Is that right, Steve? 6.5 million. So we do have that as a standby, fallback, should we need it. But is it challenging? You bet it is. But we're doing our best to get there, and we believe we can get there.
And obviously, you know, doing 18.2, we've got to do 18.2 again next year.
We have.
That is what I'm saying, you know, and it doesn't bode well when we're saying that we think that putting a higher challenge to ourselves this year in order to actually achieve the 18.2 was beyond the realm. So, so my other questions are, obviously, we've now got, you're using the contingency. Can you tell me what is the current value of what the contingency we have left? Because I believe, if I remember rightly from the papers, it was a £12 million budget. but obviously you're looking to take 1.5 out for the contact management and 20,000 for another consultation for home to school transport. I'm surprised that PwC, when we're paying them nearly £1 million, that wasn't actually within their remit. So can you tell me what the current value of the contingency pot is? What have we got left, please?
Are we talking about the contingency or are we talking about the transformation
Sorry,
fund?
the transformation.
Transformation fund.
Sorry.
Okay, the transformation fund, I thought this might come up. So it's between I'm not sure the exact figure, but it's between 7 and 8 million still.
Okay,
So that's what we've got left at the moment.
And then you've got the 1.5 and the 20,000, or is that net?
I believe that's come out of this already. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And just one more.
That's fine, keep going, they're all relevant questions.
Okay, just one more, and it's something I've asked last time, and I will ask again, because obviously with the 18.2 in total, any of those that are seen as a one-off will not run through to the following year and will put additional pressure on the following year. So how many do you know what proportion is a one-off potential saving, and how many are the rest is run rate? And the other thing is, I am concerned at the full year equivalent, and, you know, are all the figures that we've got in here, are they full year, or are they the expectation if it was to start in July and finish obviously next March, that is the figure there, or are they all full year equivalents? Because obviously not everything is going to start on April the 1st.
Councillor Snell. Could you just turn your mic off, please, Councillor?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, just need to check on that because it's obviously there's a lot of figures there. But so you are right in your assumption. Some of these will carry over into 25, 26. So, but you know, but we've already saved, is it 22 million up to that's 22 million running into next year, isn't it?
18.2.
18.2, yeah.
Is that answer okay, or do you want more for... Right, okay.
So 18.2 is this year. Yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, 18.2 is this year's savings. This is the in-year savings, yes. Yes. So this is the full year savings. So are you saying that
That's not what I asked. What I asked.
Say it again, maybe a bit more succinctly, please, Councillor.
What I asked is the savings proposals we've currently got, are those figures a full year equivalent, or are they the savings that you will achieve if, for instance, the start date was in July and then finishing there? So are they that, because you need to do the 6.9 million, is that the full year equivalent, or is that the savings of when they're planned to start and deliver? Is that clearer?
yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, it's the latter of those, yes. So that's from the start to the finish. So they're not all going to appear right at the start of the year. So that they are full year.
So in effect, that could be a hell of a lot more if you apply full year effect to it. If they're low, because there's a number of them that won't start till the middle of the year. So if that's been prorated, if you apply full year, that actually could be an awful lot more.
Yes, yeah, you're right, and the benefit of that will be seen in 25, 26. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Right, that's it.
Thank you. No, really good question, thank you. Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I just want a bit of clarity around one of the savings. It's regarding the business rate retention pooling. So actually in the narrative, you're saying that the initial proposal for pooling generates 2 million for the council. The latest estimates indicated that the pooling saving can increase to 2.5 million to mitigate the 18.2, but we found 503k. So can you just, and that's what you're putting forward as a saving. So can you just give me a little bit of narrative of, the way this is reading is that we were going to get 2.5 million, but actually we're only going to get 503. Okay?
Just turn your mic. Thank you. Councillor Snell, when you're ready.
So we originally said it was going to be 1.7 million, if you remember. And so we've raised that to the extra 503. And the reason we were able to do that is that we took advice on what the expectation would be. Previously, we were having, if you like, the best guess. But we've actually gone out and taken advice on what the realistic figure should be, and that's where you get the extra 503 million from. Does that answer your question?
It does. Can I also just point something else out, just for you, a statement to let you know that at the last meeting, Councillor Worrell asked if we could see the papers earlier to put any alternative proposals in, because we hadn't had any officers help us or saw the paperwork beforehand. And you said that you would guarantee that we would have an officer help us. It didn't happen again in this meeting. So we have come to this meeting exactly like we were before. So it didn't work.
Hang on. So, Councillor Snell, if you'd just like to address the point that Councillor Watson
That's
has made.
disappointing to hear, Councillor Watson. On the point of the papers, I can say that we've not had these very long either, to be fair. These, as you can imagine, you've seen, there's about inch and a half thick of papers, so we've not had them long. But that's no excuse. I said you would have an officer to help. I'm a little bit disappointed that nobody's come on to me to tell me that that's not been happening until now. A quick phone call might have resolved that. But you're right, that should have happened, and I do apologise that it hasn't.
Thank you. And thank you very much for that, Councillor Snell. Any further, Councillor Watson, or you're okay for now? Yep. Councillor Muldowney, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a clarification, because in this report it says that the 11.3 million that was scrutinised in the November meeting was approved by Cabinet. However, when I reviewed the Cabinet minutes and the webcast for that meeting, you said, Councillor Snell, that you weren't asking for approval at that meeting. It was only a report to note. So can you clarify, have those 11.3, bar the cost savings that you've now identified not being deliverable under that, which is about 1.3 million, were they approved at that Cabinet meeting or not? Because I think the focus tonight is on the additional 6.9 million, which wasn't scrutinised at the November meeting. So I want to know, where do we stand with the original 11.3, please?
Councillor Snell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Muldowney, for your question. The answer is actually pretty straightforward. What we agreed on in Cabinet was that those proposals go forward. But of course, like any budget, the budget isn't agreed by Cabinet, that's agreed by Council. So we've agreed that those proposals go forward to Council for consideration at the budget meeting. And this is the extra 6.9 that we're adding to that, which will then go to Cabinet should it be approved or otherwise tonight. And we would agree or otherwise at Cabinet for them to go forward to full Council.
And on the subject of the savings which need to be made, obviously we've got this 1.3 million, which further investigation has shown aren't going to be deliverable over the next year. And we've also got this, now we've suddenly got this extra 1.7 million, which cost savings need to be identified for going ahead. Do you think, like literally with weeks to go before the budget setting council meeting, so half of that's been identified, it seems, from the report, and the bulk of that seems to be coming from removing the council tax hardship fund. How does that equate with promises by the administration that they were going to protect the most vulnerable?
Councillor Snell.
And do you think that that's a financially sound decision to have gone in that direction?
Thank you. Councillor Snell.
In terms of the hardship fund, it's not true to say that there isn't going to be any hardship mitigation, because that's going to be decided through the normal process that would be if people approach the council that are in trouble with their council tax. So, anybody can still do that in the way they was able to before. So I don't think removing it completely is going to be as much of an issue as it might otherwise have been. Yes, we are still trying to find savings, but we are confident that we'll get the savings, if not immediately, but we'll have them by March.
Would you like further questioning?
Yeah, well, okay, so you think that that's perfectly okay and that's an example of good financial management to be adding these extra cost savings in literally weeks before? How can there be any real scrutiny of, well, we can't scrutinise those proposals tonight because they're not on the table in any detail, and they've got to be signed off by the 22nd of March. There's not really going to be an opportunity for those to be properly scrutinised before they come forward to the council budget setting meeting. You know, what's underlying the decision to make this last minute change, which has resulted in not just the 18.2 million, which you yourself admit has been challenging, although this is the first year of cuts, it should be the easiest year. You know, we've got 4 more years of this, at least, if possibly more. What has underlined this decision, and what's your justification for having to bring forward these additional 1.7 million in cuts?
Thank you, Councillor. So the specific points about justifying where we are. So if you could please, Councillor Snell.
I mean, this was going to be coming up later on in the meeting, but we can deal with it now, I guess. So ultimately, we made the decision to not charge the residents of Thurrock the full 9.99% in council tax. Therefore, that generated a deficit, which we need to recover. Now, that's a choice that we had to make. We could either charge the full 9.99, which was budgeted for, and that was what was modelled. But we chose not to go down that route. We decided that we would try to save the residents of Thurrock some extra money. So we've managed to, as you quite rightly say, we have found some of the money we needed to save, but we are still looking for the rest. However, that will come back to overview and scrutiny in the first scrutiny meeting of the new municipal year.
Councillor.
Okay, so this new budget will have to be signed off by the new cabinet, whoever that might be, in the new municipal year. So really, you failed in terms of setting a budget that will be signed off by this administration
not at all.
Within this year.
Not at all. We have to set a legal budget, and that's what we will do. I have the section 151 officer next to me who will be doing a section 25 statement which will say exactly that. But, you know, as I've said before, and I'll say it again now, this is not an easy process. We're all fighting really hard to find the savings. We understand there are going to be some that are going to be left at the moment that we can't do right now, but we are confident they will come in. And it is right that whatever savings we find between now and the end of March does come to scrutiny. It will come to scrutiny. It's just that obviously we're running out of time to do that. This has been a huge undertaking by this council, and the officers have worked incredibly hard. Now, to be fair to the officers, it's not their fault that we decided quite late on in the day that we were going to go for the 7.99. So the officers have been scrambling to try and find this extra money. They've done extremely well up to now. They will do well, and we will close that gap, and it will come to overview scrutiny, as I say, in the new year. You know, if we could do it sooner, we would, but we are unable to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So what's underpinned this late decision? I mean, what's the justification for this late decision? I mean, I agree that officers have done an excellent job in bringing forward these budget savings. So why, you know, and with all the resource problems that we've got of not having enough people in post, particularly in finance department, why have you decided to put this extra pressure on officers literally weeks before the budget setting council meeting? I mean, it's a real shambles, isn't it?
That's actually quite encouraging to hear, Councillor Maldoni, because that suggests to me that you were quite happy to raise council tax by the 9.99. So I kind of regret now going for a lower figure to save the residents of Thurrock some money.
Don't put words in my mouth, Councillor Snell. That's
Well,
not what I
you know,
said.
you're
I'm asking about the lateness of the decision that has put additional pressure on staff who are already under considerable pressure, you know, and what is the justification for that, for the late decision?
The justification...
If Councillor, if you could just give a very sort of clear
I thought I did,
and
Chair.
then
but-
I'll move on to other questioning because I think we're at the point of agreeing to, you disagree with the answer, but once Councillor Snell's given the answer, it's obviously you disagree and that's your prerogative, but then we'll move on to a different line of questioning, okay? So thank you, Councillor Snell.
The justification is to save the residents of Thurrock money on their council tax.
Thank you very much. So are you okay with me closing that down now, Councillor? Because you disagree with the answer, but it's still an answer that's been given about why it's happening. So
I accept the answer. It's
yeah.
not a very good answer, and I'm not
No, that's
satisfied
fine.
with the
That's
answer, but
yeah.
I accept that an answer has
Thank
been
you.
given, such as it is.
Councillor Morris-Cook.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring this up now. I was going to bring it up when we talk about the hardship fund, but as Councillor Mardoni's brought it up, I'm interested to understand what's changed, because last year the administration, and I think it was with the agreement, increased the hardship fund because of obviously the council tax increase, the increase in rents. And my understanding is out of the 616,000, 550 of that has been utilised. So I'm just a bit confused. If we increased it last year to help people and the most vulnerable, and obviously knowing that the council tax is going up again and rents are going up, why do we not think that there will be, if only a 550,000 demand, possibly exponentially larger with the percentage increase that it was from the previous year? I can't understand that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm reading the notes here. I think it was decided that we need to manage the potential demand for the limited funds. So the answer is that there's already a scheme in place that if you're struggling with your council tax, you can apply for aid for that council tax. That already exists. So the problem with the hardship fund was that virtually anybody could apply. And the fear is that it was just given, if you rang up, you'd get some hardship fund money. So we don't think that was the best use of funds to do that. So we've resorted back to the statutory way of doing it, where people can apply for a hardship fund in a normal manner, and that way I think they'll get, I'm not sure exactly what the fee is each, but they'll get some money back to mitigate the rise in the council tax.
But surely there is a process in place. And my understanding is when there's about 4 different streams of hardship fund, this particular one that we're looking at is the one that was for the council tax only, because I am aware that there are others where people have applied for hardship fund and they're naturally being told no, because they're trying to save money and hoping that the people don't come back, because if they ask a second time, they're more likely to get it. But you are saying that people are going to still be able to apply. However, there won't be any money in the pot that used to be there to support the council tax. So they can we're either saying that if you're struggling, sorry, you're going to struggle because actually that pot of money has gone, even if you put stricter scrutiny and processes in place. So there's no hardship fund to help them. But you just said that they could apply. But where's that money going to come from?
Councillor Snell.
Can I pass it over to you to answer that? Yes. I'll pass it over to Steve to answer that one, if I may.
There is at the moment government funding that supplements the council's £600,000. So if that government funding continues, which is likewise household support fund, etc., any claims would have to come out of that money as opposed to the council's £600,000.
And that's hoping that the government grant continues.
It is anticipating that they will. We do not know if they will, yes.
But it's not going to be a £616,000 pot anymore, because that's
No,
going.
that will go, assuming members approve this at Cabinet and Council. If the government continues with its national schemes, people will be able to call on that.
Thank you very much for that question and thank you for the answers. Councillor Spillman. Councillor John Kent.
My questions were on the hardship fund again, but if I could just get some clarity. The government element last year was 244,000, I believe, and that was a one-off. Have we had any signal or comfort from government that it will be? The Section 151 officer is shaking his head.
I haven't seen anything. We are awaiting information. There's also the Household Support Fund, Councillor Ken.
Yeah.
Likewise, we're awaiting clarification.
We're waiting for that.
You've seen something.
And the level of government support per application is £25, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's £25. So, you know, it's kind of minimal support when you're looking at a council tax bill of 1,700 quid and an increase of 8%. I'm just genuinely worried, A, about the extra hardship that we're going to be putting some residents through, and B, about the impact that this will have on the council tax collection rate, and just concerned that we're saving money over here only to lose it over there.
To come back on that, or
Perhaps if I comment on the latter point rather than the former point.
Okay.
The Council's tax recovery rate held up extremely well. Last year, the anticipation is, yes, it will continue to do so as a matter. That's a factual response, Councillor.
did you want to come back, Councillor Kent?
Only to say that one of the reasons that council tax rates hold up is that we're always collecting council tax that hasn't been paid in previous years. At some point, that will have caught up, and then I fear that we will fall off a cliff edge with collection rates.
Thank you. No other members indicated. We're still on item 4, so we're not into the recommendations yet. We're going to move to individual portfolio holders, and it's in reverse order to how it was at the last meeting. So Councillor Johnson and Councillor Carter haven't got the graveyard shift like last time. So
we were the first last time. I'll keep it. Do you find it so forgettable, Chair?
okay. Well, that's fine. We'll go straight into Councillor Johnson presenting his slides.
Thank you, Chair. The part I'll talk about is the CTS 0027 with the review of the children's cases, as we'd already been through the review of social care at the last...
Sorry, Councillor Johnson. Could we have the slide for the whole screen, please? So thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as I said, I'll talk about the top one on there, the 150,000 as the one below it was done to death at the last meeting we had. As you'll all be aware, we from time to time need to fund placements for our children with extreme needs, and this saving will come whereby we prove that by using the continuing health care criteria for children, that some of those placement costs can be recharged to our health partners as a health contribution cost. As I said, 150,000, we think it's an extremely doable figure. If anyone has any questions, I'll quite willingly answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'm going to go firstly to ask if Councillor Rigby has any questions as Chair of the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
It was just to know more about the health contribution, please, how that works and how you can ensure that you will get that saving that way.
I will bring Sheila in to give you the more technical side of it, Councillor, but there is that continuing health criteria there. So there is a criteria to work to. On a technical side, then Sheila and her team will sit down with that and prepare to do it. As I said, I believe I'm not going to say it's a conservative figure, but it's a figure that I think we're quite well willing will do. But Sheila?
Yeah, so we have what we call a complex need panel, which has senior health professionals and education and social care meet to go through the complex cases which have got children who've got education needs, social care needs and health needs. What we know from the invoices of the placements we get is what the healthcare costs as well as the education costs as well as the social care costs So when it meets, it's quite a strict criteria that you have to meet in order to get health contribution. But when we meet that criteria, in that panel, a decision is taken that health will then contribute, and we have an agreement that if it's a three-way funding, then it will be a third payment. If it's a two-way funding, it will be a half and a half. And we really sort of majored on this year, and we have achieved round about 400k savings. Well, it's savings, it's costs that we've got back from our health, because obviously it's an overspending budget, demand-led budget. So we are confident that we've got really good processes in place. We've got good working with our health colleagues of education and social care, and that we will be able to make those contributions to those complex budgets. If we didn't get those contributions, we would then have to be paying that from the general fund.
Thank you. And just to clarify, that extra health funding is coming from central government, is it, outside? Is that where the funding is coming from?
No, it comes from our health colleagues, so it's probably through the ICB budgets.
It's external to any council funding?
It's external to the general fund, yes.
Thank you.
Is that it, Councillor? You okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to go to the Vice Chair of the committee, Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So in terms of the health contribution, that is a good idea, to be recouping the costs that we need to recoup. But have we just started doing this? Because it kind of begs the question, why haven't we been doing this before we had these pressures? Or maybe we have, but I don't know. We've managed to...
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Councillor Muldowney, but it's one that I personally, without wonderful hindsight, could really give you a proper answer to. But it is a good question. It is something that's been looked at for a long while. I think we're just drilling down on it more now. But so if Sheila wants to add anything more to that, then she can.
Nationally, it's been quite difficult for children's services to achieve payment under the continuing healthcare fund for children's services. It's different for adult services, but in children's services up and down the country, it's been quite difficult to get that funding. What we did last year through some of that transformation fund was we employed somebody who has got both health experience and children's social care experience, who was able to help us to navigate the continuing healthcare process, and has helped and mentored some of our own staff to know the criteria, because it's quite a strict criteria under the continuing healthcare. So because of that, we are now actually being more successful in making claims against the continuing healthcare fund for contributions in some of those high, and it's very complex high cost placement, because it has to be quite severe health needs involved for those children, because otherwise it's where those needs can't be met in their local community. So that's usually in very specialist placements, because otherwise children can access their GP or a local hospital in their area where they're placed. So these are usually children with incredibly complex health needs that are being met within their placement, that we can identify as being an absolute health need that we can then claim under the continuing healthcare for children.
Would you like to carry further question?
Yeah. So, yeah, well, it's good that it's happening now. And presumably there was a cost to having that consultant come in. Do you know what that cost was?
I think it was probably in the region of 30,000, something like that, but they're not with us anymore because we've trained our own staff to take on those continuing healthcare assessments. That was last year.
But that's clearly, you know, a good outlay for the return that we've got on that. So some of these costs are additional costs to mitigate the budget savings from the 11.3 million that have proved to be non-deliverable, that's correct. Yeah, and you're confident that we're going to make that? Because, I mean, it's just the placements budget historically is overspent. So, you know, it's good that this work is going on, but I just wondered why it hadn't been going on, as obviously this is an area of budget pressure and has been for some time. So in terms of the review of social care, how are these cost savings being made? Have they already been made? How confident are you that they are deliverable?
Yeah, as I said, Councillor Muldoon, this was all discussed at the last meeting. We're confident they're there, they're being done. I don't really want to go over it again because, to say, I don't want to sit here for 6 hours again. Sorry.
Right, thank you. Would we...
So, did you say yes, you are confident that they can be made?
Yes, very. As I said, you know, the minutes of the last meeting, you'll see exactly pointed out what they said about it.
Because obviously, you know, part of our going from needs improvement to good Ofsted report means that, you know, we had to look at our spans of control, our management spans of control and our social work caseloads. So obviously, I believe that these cost savings are being made partially by deleting vacancies, so getting rid of staff, particularly from early help. So I just want to make absolutely sure that this isn't going to impact our improvement of our service, and we're not going to actually slip back into problems when Ofsted come around again.
Councillor?
I am very confident of that, because let me just make it clear, we didn't take any social workers out at all, none whatsoever. So, you know, let's make that quite clear. Some of it was done through putting posts against grant funding. As I said, you know, there was a slightly reduced in demand as well. But, you know, that's all in the minutes of the last meeting. That's there, done and dusted. That 233 is there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member of the Children's Committee? Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Chair. It's something, just picking up on what Councillor Maldani was talking about. I was just wondering, and you forgive me if you've already explained it, but what were the specific barriers from accessing the funds in the past? And then what have you put into place specifically going forwards to make sure that you will be able to access the funds? Thank you.
Sorry, so I think the question was, what have we put in place to make sure we get the savings and then going forward? I think what we've done is really focused on understanding how we can apply the continuing healthcare criteria in children's services. We've worked closely with our health colleagues, which is part of setting up a panel so that we can get joint ownership around some of those more complex cases, and bringing in somebody to help us to understand how we access that funding and what we need to do to apply the criteria properly. So we trained our own staff to be able to do that, so that now it's becoming business as usual for us, because actually we understand how that CHC works in children's services. A whole system of panels have been set up, and particularly for those very complex placements that involve education, health and social care, they're being discussed at a specific panel monthly. So as new cases are coming in, we're reviewing those as they come and making sure the placements that we've currently got are being reviewed constantly, just in case need increases and there's an issue of additional funding. So yes, I mean, we have done particularly well in applying that in Thurrock.
Do you want to carry?
That's it, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so no one else from the committee. Right. Okay, the next person who's not on the Children's Committee is Councillor Raper.
Thank you, Chair. Just really following on from that question, we've been fortunate enough to bring someone in who's trained up our own staff and so on. Have you got any idea of a figure of how much we've got in these grants since that's happened? Thank you.
So I can get the exact figure, but it's in the region of 300 to 400k already that we've achieved, which is why we're fairly confident, because it's a small number of children, but they're high cost placement, so they can cost 200-300k a year each placement. So it's really when we can apply the criteria appropriately, you know, it does bring so one placement could bring us, for example, 100k funding. So it is about small numbers of children, but very high cost placement. So that's how we're achieving it. And as we get more children coming into our, you know, services who require those more complex placements, I feel we're in quite a good position to actually keep applying this criteria, and we're actually working really well with our health colleagues. So I am confident of that. What we don't want to do is to sort of over-egg it and say we can get even more, but actually we will keep applying it through the year, and if there's even more savings, then I'm sure that will come forward. But it's savings against a total budget that's overspending.
Thank you. It's good to be reassured that actually there has been money coming in since we've had someone come in and train staff. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else indicated for Councillor Johnson? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. I'd like Councillor Carter to present his slide now, please. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. If we can, sorry, can someone confirm if they're up for me? I haven't got the best eyesight. Thank you. So sorry about that. So our ones here today presenting before you are both on home to school transport. We're looking to make savings by reviewing the policy and routes to secure improved value for money. This includes working with our academies and schools to see if there can be any alternative arrangements to what has been done before. And we are changing the post-16 charging policy. This isn't a statutory requirement. It is something that the council has been doing, but it is not statutory. I want to be clear on that.
Right, thank you, Councillor Carter. Like the previous presentation, I'm going to look first to Councillors Rigby and Maldoni and the rest of the committee. So, Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just with regards to the charging policy that you're changing, is that still going to be means assessed on that?
Yes, it will be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is another area that historically we've overspent in. You know, I mean, it's not just us, it is a national trend. So why are we looking at this rather than some other area when we've got this overspend? So we're trying to make cost savings, first of all. And then the review of policy and routes. What specifically are you reviewing in terms of routes? And does this, sorry, the other question is, does this include the move to the dynamic purchasing system, or is that under another bit? Because that wasn't mentioned.
Thank you. If you could address the routes part of the question first and then the next part.
Yes, so Councillor Maldoni is quite right. This is an area we've historically overspent on, and historically, so has most local authorities overspent on here. The reduction only covers 7% of the budget. So it's the budget was 5.9 million, so it's only a 7% reduction for the budget overall. So it's a statutory service as well. So if someone needs a service, they will have a service as well. But for routes, which you actually asked me to answer first, it really varies by school, by academy, where they're going, how we can work these together, because we have hundreds of different routes being taken across Thurrock, and maybe we can merge some of these, put them together. Some of our academies are looking at providing their own service for home to school transport. I'll bring in Sheila if she wants to add anything.
Yeah, so I think Councillor Maldoni mentioned the dynamic purchasing contract that we're looking at. We do expect to make some efficiencies through that. We will be looking at optimising routes and how we can do that. So with all of that combined, you know, we are confident we can make the 400, it's roughly 400k savings against that budget. But I think it's just giving the assurance again that Councillor Carter has. It is a statutory, apart from post-16, it's a statutory service. If you meet the criteria for SEN transport, you will be provided with SEN transport. Historically, this is a budget that's been overspending, but money has been put into this budget year on year through the MTF. And actually, this year, we are coming in just slightly under our almost 6 million budget.
The other question that I had was about, obviously it says in the report that this came to scrutiny about the dynamic purchasing system. Now, at that scrutiny meeting, I asked where are the financials, because there was no financial information in that report for us. We were asked to consider 4 options. The options weren't very well defined either. But we were asked to look at 4 options in scrutiny, but there were no financials. And at that meeting, I was told that that's because the focus wasn't on budget savings going over to the DPS. So I'm quite surprised to now hear in this report and at the Cabinet meeting, actually, which I reviewed earlier, that you're expecting to make cost savings from this. So although it came to scrutiny, again, you know, there was no information there about financials. I mean, how confident are you that there are going to be savings made from going over to this DPS system? We were told it was about flexibility and about having a more robust pool of providers to be able to draw on. Now we hear as well that we're expecting budget savings from this. I would have liked to have seen some figures on that at scrutiny. So please, can you take that feedback and if you provide that next time.
And about the guarantees of the savings as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on what data, on what basis are you projecting these savings?
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
There was I was at that scrutiny committee, and there was some concerns over a bit of info. It was a committee rose good problems. Will there be a cost saving to the by going to the DPS, and whether Essex would provide, we were seeing if the licensing fee would come out of Essex or us, and this was then clarified to Cabinet, which is why it was then introduced to have a saving element to it. And with the flexibility, we do expect to then be able to make the saving, and we are confident we can make that saving.
Okay, I mean, that's a different part of the question. Yes, I did raise that concern of, are there going to be any onboarding costs for using their system, or Essex County Council going to provide it for free? If so, there's a few other things we could do with some help with. So I did see that it was confirmed at Cabinet that there weren't going to be licensing costs, which is good. However, I still haven't seen any data which shows that there's going to be a cost saving. I understand that you hope that there will be.
So the new contract is not the total how we're going to make all the 400k savings. I think it needs to be clear about that. Some of that will come about through the change in policy post-16. Some of that will be about other efficiencies. Some of that will be about how we're working with our schools around other transport options. And as I say, we've had a slight underspend this year, so we would be looking to capitalise on that as well. So we are confident that we will make that saving next year. It will be strongly monitored because, as we know, this is a volatile budget, and we may have children enter the system that we're not aware of today, for example. So we will be monitoring this really closely, but we've put this forward thinking that, yes, we can achieve this, and it will be monitored closely, and I'm sure it will be coming back to a number of committees over the next year.
Anyone? Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just pick up, Councillor Carter, about when you talked about working with academies? What does that look like, and how far are you into that project?
Sorry, I'm just going to clarify if I can mention specific academies or not, okay?
Just while they're conferring, does anyone else want to indicate to speak once the... I've got Councillor Spillman. Once the Children's Committee have finished, I'd like to bring in others. So, Spillman, Morris Cook, Raper. Anyone else? You can indicate throughout, but I just thought I'd get my list ahead of time.
So yeah, we are currently working with some, and we're in early stage discussions with others about how those will come about. I'm not going to name specific ones today, but I'm happy to do that privately in an email if you want to.
Yes, thank you. And if I could just carry on then. So, yep. So when would those savings start? Because obviously, if you're in the early stages now and we're sort of mid to end February, are you looking at the new financial year or are you looking at the new academic year?
New academic September.
Thank you. And then just moving on, I noticed on page 9, so 3.8.1, the saving initially was 250,000 and you've moved that up now to 395,000 as mitigation to work towards the 18.2. What extra savings did you find to get another 145,000, which is sort of almost more than 50% more? Thank you.
Well, it is a number of factors. The slight underspend we've got this year as well, and I do want to clarify that can change tomorrow with the slight overspend, and we have seen more interest from academies in the new process of doing it and them doing their own home-to-school transport. So it has been changed, but that's as more academies have come forward.
Sorry, what from 250,000 to 395? Yeah, that's more academies coming forwards.
Yeah, so I suppose what we're saying is with the combination of the things that we are looking at, that's where we feel confident in putting this extra stuff forward. I just want to be clear, the academies that are coming forward are academies that have already got resource bases, so it's not just any academy group. They have to already have resource bases, so already have children with additional needs that are being transported to their provisions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. That's it from the committee. So, Councillor Spillman.
I've just heard that spend. It's not a spend, that total spend. It's not a spend. It's not an area of specialism for me, and it's not a spend that I was aware of. And then the figure's so large, it's quite stark. What's the cost per pupil with your entire budget when it comes to, right, how many pupils have we got that we're providing this to? And do we know what it is per pupil?
No, if it's the quick answer, we wouldn't have that to hand. Thurrock does have more EHCPs than anyone else, but sort of relevant, sort of not. But we do have more people with healthcare plans, and in turn that also means more home-to-school transport in times, but not always. And I'll just bring Sheila in as well.
Yeah, so I don't have that to hand, but we can get that information for you. But costs will range, so some children will be travelling some distance compared to other children who will be on minibuses rather than just being, some children might be travelling on their own because of special needs that they have. I
just think that's an important context, obviously, when we're discussing this, because it could be, you know, if we're only transporting 5 children for that money, then it's, you know, I'm just being silly, yeah? But if we're transporting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds for a very reasonable fee, then that context is important. Is there any way of wrapping up, I mean, what was the total figure, sorry? 5.7, did you say? Or
5.9.
5.9. Is there any way of going out to tender and wrapping that whole service up with a single company offering the service? Is that something that's been considered? I mean, that's a lot of money.
Every local authority is transporting many children with SEN additional needs every day. Sometimes which is why we've joined the dynamic purchasing system, because it can be very difficult to find providers because all the schools start at the same time and finish at the same time. So the demand for those services are high. and there isn't always those, lots of providers out there. So by joining that system, we have access to more providers than we've had on our previous system. And the dynamic system means that providers can join the contract as well. So if there's a new service set up by someone and they wanted to join the system and they met all the criteria, then we could then use them in a way that we couldn't with the current system that we had. It was a closed contract. So yes, it's quite a crowded market already, and there are many journeys, and there are hundreds of children being transported every single day just by Thurrock, let alone if you add all the other local authorities in. Significant amounts of children and funding is being spent on transporting children with special needs.
No, there's no viable chance of wrapping up a big contract and putting it out to the market to see what comes down the line.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Councillor Morris-Cook.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick question. I just saw that in the transformational budget there is 20,000 there for consultation for home to school. Has that consultation been completed, or is that something that you're doing in addition to what's already been done in the past year? And I'm just interested where you got the figure of 395 from.
We're still doing it. It's ongoing. I was there when it launched. I saw some, and we've had so far. This is an approximate. About 60 people have filled in. I'm basing that on the replies we've had to the first question, because as you go through it, the amount of responses per questions change. The 3.95, as I've said earlier about the change, we are a bit more optimistic about these savings now. We've had more academies come forward. We are, fingers crossed, still under budget at the minute for this year, and again, that could change tomorrow. But I think we answered that earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raper.
Thank you. Question for Councillor Carter. As I was reading through all this and I was looking at the section on the dedicated schools grant, is there likely to be an impact from the schools that have got rack in the buildings?
No, because all the children are at school.
Do you want further clarification?
I'd like a little bit more than that. Perhaps it would be from a different funding stream or whatever, but I'm just concerned, is it going to have an impact on children in the borough in any way? Thank you.
In terms of the schools that have got rack issues, all of those children are attending their same school, so it's not incurring any additional transport costs for the family or for us. I think that was the question. Was that not the question?
Sorry, it wasn't about the transport costs. It was about the dedicated schools.
Well, this section, we're looking at the 2 home-to-school transport reviews. Sorry.
I shall reserve my question for the next bit.
Okay. Councillor Redsell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Carter. Just asking, earlier on you mentioned that academy schools will start or try to do their own transport. Is that going to have a detrimental effect on the academies where money is tight at the moment with their funding?
Well, they've willingly come forward and said they want to engage in this programme, so it seems to me they're more than happy to do it. So it's for the schools to set their budget, but some of them are very positive about coming forward, and that's only growing the number of schools or academies that have come to us.
Thank you.
And Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. With the post-16 travel charge being rated at a negative on the impact assessment, the residents responding it should stay. With this in mind, are you happy and confident with this saving?
I don't think anyone's happy with the saving, to be perfectly fair, but it's not a statutory requirement. Most of the most what we've got left now in education is statutory, and we've been providing these services for years, which we haven't had to, and this has led to problems in budgets in Thurrock over the years. So it's normal practice to charge post-16, and we're just going in line with the norm, really.
Councillor, please do.
Thank you, Chair. So with that in mind, can you assure us anybody who will be all post-16 will not be unfairly disadvantaged due to this saving if they cannot afford it?
I can assure you that it's been means tested, Councillor Green.
Okay. Yeah.
Could you go into further details on these means tested, please?
Well, sorry, what I got for the community impact assessment you talked, I don't know if, I'm assuming you've got it because of there. In there, it is all the effects are rated. And yes, there might be a negative effect on some, but it is not a statutory service at the end of the day. And if there are other ways we can cut the budget that you have alternatives for instead of this, I please ask you to bring them forward, and I look forward to reading Labour's alternative budget this year.
Councillor Green, you okay? Or?
Instead of keep going on the generic answer given to you besides you, can you actually answer the question and tell us
Can we,
what
sorry,
the action...
hold it. Councillor,
I mean, I feel like
please, you're going to have your... No, but hang on. No, but there's nothing... If a councillor wants to, has read the report and delved in and written a question because they want to articulate in a particular way, I haven't got a problem. No, I didn't say there is. My problem, sir, is with you interjecting when it's not your turn, okay? I've not got a problem with either Councillor Green or Councillor Carter. They're having a healthy disagreement, which is what we're here for. So, please. Councillor Green, finish off your point.
Thank you.
Councillor.
So, in regards to the means testing, will that be? I want to know more. Will that be on the opinion of the council? They could cut their budget at home to afford this. I want to know more how you get to the point that they can actually afford to pay for post-16 travel.
I'll be very brief and I'll hand over to Sheila. It's a service we should have been charging for, or we should have had a charge in for. So, yeah, it's not something we should have been doing, providing for free as a local authority, and it's about time we'd start making fiscally responsible decisions and not providing services we can't afford to do so. We need to start moving past that. So I'm going to pass over to Sheila now.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring that information with me tonight, but we have looked at two different bands, and we compared what other local authorities are paying our near neighbours as well as further afield, because most local authorities do levy a charge for post-16 transport. From my understanding, it's not a full cost recovery, but it is a charge, and there's two rates. One is a lower rate, which will be, will have a criteria against it, and that's what we'll be assessing families and against. So I have got that detail, but I haven't got it with me tonight, so I'm really sorry, but we will get that for you. And I think we put that out in the consultation as well. So we've pitched ourselves at the middle range. So we've looked at more, some councils are charging a higher rate and a slightly lower rate, so we've gone sort of middle band. And I think, to start off with, we'll see how that goes, but actually we have got rates. It's two rates. One is a lower rate than the other one, and there will be a criteria about how you can do that and a process if you feel that's unfair, or if you're in really particular hardship, we would be looking at that. So we wouldn't want to be detrimentally affecting post-16 education for our children who've got EHCPs.
Thank you. And thank you for that extra level of detail that was asked for. Councillor Polly is next.
Thank you very much, Chair. On the school transport issue, as we've already heard, it wouldn't lend itself to a generic form of transport. I myself used to live in Chadwell St Mary, get a coach down to Tilbury to school. So with children with the special educational needs, that you couldn't put them on one bus because they've all got different needs and things. Is all this budget for children that are being educated within Thurrock boundaries, or are we transporting them out? And we also do have one of the best special educational needs facilities in Treetops within the borough, and we know that there are people that are outside of the borough trying to get their children educated with us here in Thurrock. So who bears those transport costs? And as a final, just a final on that.
I will come back to you for the final one, but I think you're asking about whether it's Thurrock-based children travelling within Thurrock or children from outside Thurrock travelling in to access Thurrock education. Is that right? Because if it is that specific, I'd like to give councillor and the officer a chance to answer it. Did I get that right? Or?
Yeah, I wasn't. Perhaps. I was going to follow up with: would we be able to, with extra educational places in Thurrock, would we then be able to improve on some of those transport costs?
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Which bit?
Firstly, we only pay for the ones we have a requirement to pay for, which are Thurrock children. We don't pay for ones who are outside. The costs, again, is very variable on the child-specific EHCPs. Like some can go far outside for it because there isn't a closer by education facility to match those needs, which it is disappointing. But if you've also got a very, very specific set of needs, there isn't going to be a school every 10 miles that can accommodate those, which is the sad reality. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Would you like to come back with any further questions, Councillor Polly, or is that okay? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Carter, I get that it's non-statutory post-16 transport, but I mean these are a special group of children, and they are the most vulnerable children in the borough. And their education is a bit different than normal children, so although there's not a statutory requirement, their education does tend to go on longer because of their special needs. You know, it doesn't go with the same pattern as children without special educational needs. So given that there's been a promise by the administration to protect the most vulnerable, when looking at these budget savings, what else did you look at cutting or making some budget savings on as well as this? And what was the deciding factor in terms of making this saving? Was it literally because it's not statutory? Or was there, I just want to know what other investigations did you do within the budget to see, was there somewhere else that you could cut instead of cutting this for a group of the most vulnerable children in the borough? Thank you.
Firstly, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt there. I heard a few whispers when you said compared normal children, and I didn't like those words, frankly, because every child is different. But I heard a few whispers, and I was giving you the benefit of the doubt. I don't think you meant it that way.
I don't think I said normal children. I said normal education.
No, you said normal children.
Okay. Sure. Instead of being argumentative, could you just answer the question? Right. That would be more useful.
No worries. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt, but okay. So we've looked at everything across the council, and that is how we've got to the 18.2 million. This is not a statutory service, and that is part of our Section 141 114. Sorry, that's dyslexia with numbers for me. To make sure that we're only providing statutory services. That's our requirement.
I didn't hear an answer to my question. So what other areas were looked at?
Can I just say, sorry, Councillor, I believe there was an answer there, because I think you asked about, was it just statutory that was the criteria? And I think Councillor Carter has basically confirmed that statutory was the criteria for whether it happened or not. Is that,
We've had to look at every service that is non-statutory. But the savings as a whole of everything we've looked at, you can see in front of you throughout this 18.2 million savings.
So were any other budget savings considered as well as this?
Well, everything.
I'm just trying to get at basically my question is why this cost saving and not another?
Well, would you like to suggest another? Would you like to suggest an alternative?
Well, there's a whole, what's under your portfolio? I mean, did you look at anything else? It's quite a simple question, or was this the one that you seized on because it was not statutory?
So obviously we've got all the other business cases that we've put forward in children's services. So we have looked at other areas in children's services. I think the issue is that under a section 114, we have got to look at services that we're providing that are, not a statutory minimum, and charging a cost for post-16 is fairly common in other local authorities. And so, yes, it is charging a cost for this provision. It's not full cost. So that's why we've gone for that.
Thank you. I'm going to move on because I think that's been answered now. Even if it's disagreed with, it has been answered. Sorry, Councillor Fish. Before you, it's Councillor Hartstein, and then I'll come to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back and looking in the sort of page 47, and where you sort of explain it a little bit about the detail. When you talk about these sort of changes you're looking at making, I think you've alluded to it a little bit. Do I presume you're talking about things such as perhaps removing the escort from the taxi or looking at travel training rather than providing a taxi? And then just sort of following on from that, obviously my worry is a little bit around what Councillor Polly was talking about, the most complex and most vulnerable children. Who's going to be monitoring the impact of the changes made within the transport service, and then at what point is there going to be an intervention if it's not going well, and who's responsible for that, please? Thank you.
I think in answering that for you, there's many journeys that we undertake and lots of different levels of need. So some children can go on buses with bus passes. Other children have to be in a single transport for particular reasons. So what this is not about is stopping those sorts of journeys. And I think the point was made earlier that we have I think it's quite a big budget, which is nearly 6 million. And these savings add up to, 400k roughly in a 6 million budget. So we're not talking about cutting provision for the most complex and those children who need accompaniment, who need escorts. So that's not what we're looking at here. And we certainly wouldn't be wanting to put ourselves in a position where we're leaving children unsafe on transport routes. That's absolutely not where we're at in terms of these savings. So we will be constantly monitoring what we're doing, and it will be coming to committees, and anyone can ask for information on that. And we'll also be getting feedback, obviously, from schools and from children about the services that have been provided through this. So it's not our intention to be cutting the provision, as you're sort of describing, for those really vulnerable children and young people who do need extra support in the travel. But we do transport quite a lot. I mean, I think Councillor Spillman asked that question. We will get that information of just how many. And there's such a variety and a range of how we transport. And the actual saving here as a percentage of the total budget, I hope, gives reassurance that this is not about, literally saying we're going to cut a whole range of services to children. We're looking at how we can, around some of the edges, make some of those savings.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hartstein. Councillor Fish.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Hartstein's question was exactly the one I was going to put.
Thank you, Councillor. That's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carter, for your contribution, and thank you for the officers as well. Okay. Oh, sorry, I've missed one. Councillor Manoir. Thank you.
So
This is for Councillor Carter, yeah?
Yeah, it should be anyway. So we've been discussing the fact that obviously costs have to be cut in regards to services to children with accessibility needs, special needs. But what power does the council have in regards to holding public transport providers accountable for the service they provide? Because I know at Tilbury, C2C, the lifts are just, you pick a day where they want to work, where they don't want to work. Like, it's quite, it's not really consistent. Same with Grays, there's currently engineering sort of work. So like the stairs inside the station basically are just very disjointed. So anyway, if some children may, as a result of the costs that are being cut, have to use public transport in order to get to school, does the council have any power on holding, like C2C, for instance, like accountable, making sure that those children, if they need to use like a lift, they need help getting down the stairs or et cetera, can they have any help? Or like, what role does the council play with that, if any? Thank you.
Well, I don't really think we have any say over C2C at all, or private bus companies. There would be challenges based on whether it was indirect or direct discrimination, of course. I don't think the majority of this would sit in my portfolio, however. I get that your concerns are within the cuts today, and I fully understand that where your question is completely relevant, but those are not answers I'll have available today, I'm afraid, but thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for trying with that one as well. Okay, and I now am moving on to Councillor Jeffries, who will be leading his slides, so thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the review that we took to look for opportunities to reduce costs in this particular area and also to increase the income generated from parks and open spaces through holding events such as fetes and fairs and concerts. But at the heart of all this was the council's determination to increase biodiversity. Some of the things that weren't included, just to reassure members, are all housing-related ground maintenance work, all cemeteries-related ground maintenance work, sports maintenance and play inspections. There'll be no change in any of these areas. They've been excluded from any savings that we've made. To give some reassurance to members, benchmarking was done with councils like Nottingham County, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, Plymouth and Bromley. We used those as benchmarks to find these savings. The other thing was the income generation. We plan to utilise the parks and open spaces to generate income from events such as music festivals, fun fairs, winter fairs, concession licences and other routes. Through initially increasing the number of events across each 8 sites across Thurrock, we're looking at approximate income of 74,000 that can be generated. So the total savings that we're looking for, as on the screen that you can see there, is 273,000. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go cleaner. I'm going to go to Councillor Morris Cook first as chair of Cleaner and Greener.
It's as if you knew what I was going to ask you. What proportion of the 273 was the events? So that's 74,000. I think, you know, by what you've said with the fact of protecting the sports fields and the cemeteries and things like that, I think it's absolutely the right thing to look at. One thing I would say is, and I know it's, you know, I've been saying we've got to try and deliver the 18.2, but I would like to think that we can be that innovative that we can actually move beyond the 74, so that there is some opportunities there. I think the one caveat I would have is, the concern I'd have is what happened at Christmas in Grays Town, where they were doing the carol service, and we had to go to appeal at licensing because the police didn't want the little cafe there to be offering mulled wine. So I just think we probably just need to tie a few things up to enable this council to move on. And yeah, so that was the question I was going to ask on that one. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now go to Councillor Redsell as Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you. I'll protect my field. Thank you. I just wonder, probably nobody's mentioned it before, but during COVID, at the end of COVID, people were thinking about doing, they did in Alsett, I think, do a cinema on the green and things like that. And I think that's something we've got to do more of, just to generate some income, because I think those sort of things, people will go to them, and we've got the room on there to do. So I think it's something we could look at to bring in the income. So hopefully, Andrew, you sort of have a look at that, because I think it's possible. I mean, I know they do it in Alsett on their Alsett Green, you know, and they did do it at the end of COVID. So I think it's something we could do. We've got 56 acres there, so we can do something. So it would generate some income. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Redsell. Definitely, it's a missed opportunity. Last year, I was lucky enough to get tickets to go to Saltasia in Malden. Brilliant event. It was for those of us that were slightly older, in our 50s. It wasn't for a brilliant concert. And at the time, I was thinking this would go down so well in somewhere like Blackshots or Alsett. And we should be looking at more events like that. So totally agree.
You can.
Yeah.
This is all within the recommendations that we're asked to offer opinions, hold to account, offer suggestions. It's all within what we're meant to be doing.
Yeah, it's just looking at things a little bit more out of the box, really, isn't it? And I think we should be doing that, and we can do in that area, which is you know has got things we can actually make a difference with. So I think it's good that, thanks for looking at that. And I think it's something we can, I mean, when I had the portfolio for culture and everything else we did, might not be sound now, but we did an English fair. But we did all the old things that were English, the old rides, and we made quite a bit of money. So it's where the school is going now. So we obviously can't use that bit of the field, but it does generate, people do like to come to something like that, to enjoy the day. So I think it's something we could really do. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I think you'll just say yes, you agree. Yeah. Okay. Just before I go to further people, anyone from Cleaner and Greener would like to speak? Councillor Cathy Kent.
Thank you, Chair. On the proposals, there was looking at grass cutting and the time sort of changing some parks from 3 weeks to a 5 to 6 week grass cut cycle. Can you let me know how you worked out which parks were going to continue to stay at the 3 week cutting cycle and which were going to move on to the 5 to 6 weeks? So what criteria was used? So can you give me an example of a park that was put into, that continued to have the 3 week, will continue to have the 3 week cutting cycle, and a park that will continue to that will change to have the 5 to 6 week cycle, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. I don't think it's so much as identifying one particular area. So a lot of work's been carried out in the last year. For example, looking at a park where you could leave areas of a park longer for a longer period of time to encourage wildlife, wildflowers, that sort of thing, and only cut a proportion of the park, allowing the rest of the park to be used for football, kids to play, whatever it wants to be done. So I don't think it's specifically identifying one specific area and copying that across. It's going to each park, each area, and deciding what's best for that particular area.
Sorry, just wanted, so, because when I read it as that you had certain benchmarking as to which parks had more use and they would get the 3 week cut to the other. So you're saying you're looking at each individual park, and you're going to decide which area of that park will get the 3-week cut and which area of that park will get the 5 to 6 week cut. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am, yes, yeah.
And in that case, will you be informing councillors and the public of once you've investigated the parks and what areas of the park are going to get the, how would you decide which area of the park is going to get the 3-week cut and what's going to stay to the 5-week, or going to move to 5-week? And are we going to be informed so we know, so we can check that the right thing is being done, basically?
A lot of this work's already been completed, the data analysis to find out where. I'm more than happy to share it with ward colleagues, with ward councillors if they wish so.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Hurrell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Although this is about parks and open spaces, at the last meeting we had, brown bins was spoke about, the £80 being brought in for brown bin collection. Since then, an additional £50, a £50 fee has been brought in for an additional bin now. I asked at the time, would there be any concessions for vulnerable residents? You said you'd get back to me, and when you know yourself, could you tell us if there is any concessions now, please?
We are still looking at whether concessions should be brought in, and it's something we'll get back to at a later stage.
Any further questions, Councillor?
Yeah. When will that be? Because we haven't got long to go, have we, really? And the meeting was 3 months ago, November, December, January, February, nearly 3 months ago. And surely that's got to be budgeted in, surely. So if you can just let us know when it'll be roughly, please.
So the proposal is that we introduce the brown bin charge, and then once it's introduced, we then look at the need, if there is a need for concessions.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you. I agree that income generation is preferable to budget cuts. However, I know from my conversations when I've been arranging with people to do fun days on the Heath, that there's a lot of people who are put off by the process of actually putting on an event in our public spaces. In fact, people that I've spoken to said that they got so far through the process. So can I suggest that the process of actually going through that is reviewed, what it actually takes to be able to come and, I mean, literally, the event, I was talking to somebody at an event where they came and put inflatables, and there was a fun day on Orsett Heath. And the gentleman that ran that said he's literally the only provider of that kind of entertainment who will work with the council, that others have tried to work with the council in the past. But the process of actually getting the permission to come and put on an event is so bureaucratic and convoluted that it just puts people off. So just trying to be helpful. I think really we need a review of how complicated or not it is to, I mean, obviously we have to ensure health and safety, I completely understand that. But, you know, how can we streamline that process so that we can actually encourage more fun events? It's good for the community, it's good for community spirit and getting people together and meeting their neighbours. You know, there's all kinds of benefits to it, and obviously, you know, if there's income generation as well, that's great. But how can we review that process? Right. Will there be a review of that process to make it easier for people who actually want to come and put events on in our open spaces?
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Chair. Something I never thought I'd ever say. I totally agree with you, Councillor Muldowney. The procedure is long-winded. I've had examples of it in my own ward, whereby a people wanting to put on fundraising events, local community things, and they're tied up in red tape. So part of this savings and plan that we're putting forward is to review this and to make it simpler, and also to help people if there are form filling to be done. Someone should be there to help them make sure they complete the forms properly and are able to carry out that event. That's the community ones. The more commercial events, then they're on their own. They pay people to be able to do it. But certainly with community events, we should be there to help them and assist them to get those events up and running.
Thank you very much. Okay, is Councillor Green next? Councillor Green, please.
Thank you, Chair. With potential events on our open spaces, what consideration for any potential damage to the spaces have taken place?
Yeah, of course, anyone damaging council property would be expected to pay for that damage. It will be done on an ad hoc basis, so we'd look at each event and see what damage is done, and they'd be expected to put that right.
Also, with some events, you are going to get some ASB. Are we going to be enforcing that with the organisers to ensure they put on suitable security, maybe talk to the police?
So anyone organising an event in the borough should be responsible for the safety and security of the people attending that event, so that's a cost down to them. And if police are required, then that's down for a police matter, and the police should enforce the law at any event.
Thank you. Is it going to... Right, one last one, because I think Councillor Jeffries has sort of answered that quite well.
Yeah, you're totally right with that. But as a council, will we be asking the questions to ask if they need security, if they have actually got it on site?
So there'll be an event coordinator that will advise people on what they need to do and don't do. But I would put, if it's a commercial organisation, they're responsible for putting on a safe event. It's down to them to provide the security, the safety measures. We just need to ensure that any laws are abided by that we've got in place, yes.
Thank you. I'm going to go now to Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Can I just have some clarity about what you said to Councillor Howell, really? So, are you just said about the £80 green bin charges that we're going to bring them in, and then once they're in, we are then going to think about concession for those that can't afford it, or those that are income-based, or those low? Because there should be a couple of models going on here, predicated on one's with a discretionary payment and one that's at full payment at £80.
So obviously this is a new service that we're introducing. So as we introduce the service, we can then review it, look at it, see the demographics, see where the service is being taken up, and then see if there is a need to introduce some sort of subsidy for those that can't afford. It's a little bit like finger in the wind. We don't know, do people need it? I mean, if people at the moment clear their garden and they fill their brown bin, they put it in the back of the car and they take it to the tip at the moment. Well, they might not be so willing to do that if they're paying for a charge. So therefore, we need to roll the service out, see how it goes, and then look at putting some sort of subsidy, if that's required, into the service.
I really do think you need to do some modelling around that, because there will be a concession at some point somewhere. And at the moment, most of the people are actually, good people are actually like trying putting it into their general waste, or the fly tipping's going up tremendously in Purfleet right now, where they're dumping it outside the Purfleet Heritage Centre. So they are getting rid of it somewhere without paying the cost. So I do really think that we need to start thinking about discretionary payments or concessionary payments to those that are low income or those that are elderly, or just not like the green waste, but any other bin that we come in, because we are, especially if we're going to start taking away council tax hardship funds and the hardship support fund stops, and I think we need to sort of like think about that and factor it into some of our figures.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's really important that us as community leaders set a good example, and we don't encourage people to put what should go into a brown bin into their general waste bin. We really do need to increase our recycling rates. As for fly tipping, there's no evidence that I've been shown, so I'd be interested to know if someone else has got it, that fly tipping has increased due to the fact that a charge has been in place. If people are going to fly tip, they're going to fly tip. What's important is that we have the enforcement officers that go out and catch these people and stop them from fly tipping. There really is no evidence to prove. If you start charging for something, that people start fly tipping. If they're going to fly tip, they're going to fly tip. We need to stop them, and we use the enforcement officers.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Spillman, please.
Regarding licensing and events and income generation. Now, as long as I've been in Thurrock, it's been noticeable that the amount of events in our public spaces is probably below that of comparable boroughs. There's also a lot of opposition to any large-scale or medium-scale event that seems to get proposed. They seem to find it very difficult to come through licensing. Is there anything we're doing differently that is putting off these events coming to us, allowing us to raise income compared to other boroughs? Is there anything specific about Thurrock that makes us unattractive for these income-generating events?
Thank you. I don't think we've, as a council, we've actively gone out and tried to attract events to the borough. So I don't think we've been particularly welcoming. The idea is to recruit a events organiser that will actively go out and look for people to bring large-scale events to the borough.
Is that it, Councillor Spillman? Yep. Okay, Councillor Shinnick, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jeffries, you know you're bringing in charge for the brown bins. How often will they be emptied?
Once a fortnight.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shinnick. Councillor Polly, please.
Thank you very much. As regards the discussion about events in the parks, I think I did actually bring a motion to full council about an event networking organisation to enable the various groups to share each other's knowledge, and that. So I might want to progress that at some point, see how we're doing that. Last couple of years we've had some major events in the parks because of the Queen's Jubilee and then the coronation of King Charles. So there's been some fantastic, wonderful events, and I don't think they were supported just before they were free. So I'm looking at our colleagues in our third sector again. There's been some really collaborative work done with our LACs and our tenants groups and forums, so I think we've got plenty of experience to do there. When we're charging, it's just who would we be charging? Is it what I wouldn't want to see is it become just commercialised operations where, as we've seen in certain sectors, where tickets are £25 each and it actually dispars families from taking part. Grange Waters, I think, is something that we could look at much more in generating revenue. So again, I really welcome that strategy that we are going to be looking to use those open spaces much more. Question on the bins, the assisted bins programme, is that safe for our residents? And as Councillor Hurrell said about vulnerable people with brown bins, or if we're going to will we still continue to provide that service for vulnerable people? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Polly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do need to differentiate between commercial and community events, and that will be a task given to the community organiser as and when they're employed. With regard to assisted bins, 100%, that's one of the services that there's no ifs, no buts, that stays. and the system will be exactly as it is now, and that's a yellow diamond stuck onto the bin, and that's all 3 bins or whatever the person particularly wants, and their bin will still be taken by the bin men as an assisted bin.
So we have a mechanism in place, so if we are charging for the brown bins, we'll be able to identify the ones that have been paid for, rather than sort of residents who have retained their old brown bin and are not complying, because I would be very upset if I'm paying my £80 and my neighbours next door's not, and they're still getting their bin collected. Thank you.
Yes, so each bin will have a sticker that they can stick onto the bin. It'll be particularly designed with a logo through it, so, and you can't remove it. You can't remove it from the bin because it's stuck on really tight, and also it should be quite difficult to reproduce. But also the crews in the lorries will have the Bartek system, so they'll have a list on the Bartek system that will tell them which bins they're meant to be collecting.
Thank you very much for that, councillors. Councillor Fish.
In his opening remarks, that one of the main reasons for this proposal is to create more biodiversity areas. I can remember in the past when we've tried to do this, it's been hugely controversial with residents. So can you tell us what consultation processes are going to be put into place?
So we have already carried out consultation previously last year where residents could answer. But I think part of it's about education as well. Often we'll do something to an area and people just think, oh, they've left the grass long, they can't be bothered to cut it. I think there's an education to residents to say, well, actually, the reason we've left it like this is to encourage wildlife, you know, bees into the area, flies, bugs, whatever. And that's why we're doing it. And once you explain that to people, and that's where I think all of us in the room come into it to help explain it to residents, they're quite happy with it because they've still got areas where their children can play football or they can picnic, but we're also helping the wildlife.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lydiard, please.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Jeffries, can I assume that all non-for-profit events will be free of charge?
Are you referring to when they hire the areas? So as I said earlier, it'll be the events organiser will be looking at commercial and community events and looking at the best way that they're organised and charged to make sure that, you know, community events aren't paying the same rates as a commercial venture.
So, I mean, you know, in Tilbury we have sort of, you know, the Christmas lights events, we have all sorts of events on the park, not for profit. Can I assume that they will be free of charge?
So I think each event has to be looked at in its own separate way. But from what you've just described, I wouldn't expect a community event like that to be charged substantially or charged anywhere near, well, like a commercial event would be charged.
Thank you, Councillor Lydiard. Councillor John Kent, please. No, okay. Councillor Hurrell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Polly mentions assisted bins. Would that stand for all 3 bins?
Yeah, if someone's got an assisted bin, it's all 3 bins, yes.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to check that included the brown bin as well. Okay. Also, just a little while ago, Councillor Shinnock asked how often the brown bin would be collected. You said fortnightly. I was under the impression it was 45 weeks a year.
Well, as is the norm, as has been every year, the service isn't running through the winter periods. So that will continue. That's no different to every year that there's been.
So is it fortnightly or is it 45 weeks a year?
So it's fortnightly, apart from that period of time when we don't collect brown bins, like we haven't collected them this year either, or the previous years.
Right, I'm really confused here because I'm absolutely certain that it's been made public that it was 45 weeks a year, the brown bin, when it was being paid for.
Like I said, they're collected fortnightly, but during December, January and the first bit of February, the bins aren't collected, brown bins aren't collected, and they've not been collected any year. They've always been suspended during that period of time because people aren't using them.
Sometime it has been stated,
When the
I
paid
believe by
service-
yourself, that it's 45 weeks a year.
So that's the period of time when the bins are not collected. They're not collected at the moment either. So there's no change to that. Fortnightly, but during the winter months, the bins won't be collected.
Right, so it's not going to be 45 weeks, it's going to be 20 weeks roughly a year, maybe.
Sorry, Councillor Hull, Councillor Jeffries didn't hear the specifics of your last question.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong, not 45 weeks a year.
Sorry, otherwise we're going to have the same problem of not hearing. Right, you ready, Councillor Jeffries? Right, go ahead, Councillor Hull.
I may be incorrect as in not 45 weeks a year then, which I'm sure has been stated somewhere. But anyway, I may be wrong. But if it's not during the winter period, Christmas period, say, so you take 6 weeks off of 52, that leaves 46, so about 23 collections a year for £80. Is that correct, roughly?
Apologies. So the 45-week that you're talking about, that's the period of time that we will be collecting fortnightly. So every other week, the brown bin will be collected during that 45-week period.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Cathy Kent.
Thanks, Chair. In the discussions, you mentioned with regards to the events in parks, the potential for employing an events organiser. Has the cost of that, the salary of that, been factored into the budget? Because I couldn't find it anywhere.
Councillor Jeffries, please.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been factored into the costings and the budget, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jeffries, can I thank you for answering all those questions. The next, and thank you for all the questions from the floor, really drilling into the detail. The next person is Councillor Snell, who will be presenting his slides on finance and HR payroll. And could we just have the camera on us removed for a bit because we can't see everything on there.
Thank you, Chair. So we're doing the finance, HR and payroll proposals. As you can see on the slide there, we've already spoken about the business rates retention pooling. The second number down there, which is £100,000, is mitigation, which is a council tax premium. So what that is we now have permission to charge a premium on council tax for empty properties. So that proposal is, if it's empty for longer than 12 months, it's 100% premium. If it's 5 to 10 years, it's a 200% premium. If it's over 10 years, it'll be a 300% premium. Now, the hope is, A, that will bring in some revenue right now, but the additional hope is that will bring these properties back into use. I mean, what we don't want is them sitting there for years, not doing anything, when they could be, earning revenue for everybody concerned. Annual treasury fee mitigation, 300,000. That's purely down to the fact that we're divesting of investments. We're no longer sort of spending as much treasury money, servicing those debts, etc. So there's the mitigation there. Then we go down to the people and OD team. So that 240,000 is a mixture of staff reduction and reducing the project work budget. And that's that. So I'm open to questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before I open up to the floor, I'm going to bring in members of the corporate committee, firstly. So, Councillor Morris-Cook, and then I'll go to Councillor Polly if they have any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Snell, can you just clarify for me? Back in November, there was a potential saving for HR of 600,000, if I remember rightly. Something which PwC had recommended something that had been disregarded by the senior team. So it was said then that they were going out to do a review of HR processes that would then come back with a potential saving of £600,000. I haven't seen what that was. So is this 240 new, or is this the original 600,000?
Councillor Snell, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It's the way this whole procedure is set out tonight, that actually is covered on the cross-cutting figures. So that now appears on cross-cutting because it's part of the cross-cutting budget proposals. So if I can cover that when we get to cross-cutting, if you wish.
Yeah,
it's
no
part
problem.
of that
I just
bit.
didn't know if this was, it had gone from 6 to 240, or if this was new, that was all.
Thank you. So I'll make
That
sure I'll
makes
definitely
sense.
bring you back in when it's cross-cutting. Any further questions, Councillor, before I move to Councillor Polly? No problem. If you can indicate later if you want. Anyone else with questions for Councillor Snell? Councillor Maldoni.
Just some clarity about the additional proposed mitigation on the council tax. It says, see the report elsewhere on this agenda. Can you clarify where that is? And it's not being looked at during this, it's just you spoke to it, so...
Like you clarified with Councillor Morris-Cook.
I believe that is actually it's going to be on the Cabinet agenda, yeah.
Thank you for that clarity. Anyone else like to? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Snell. We now move on to the slides to be presented by Councillor Coxall.
Thank you, Chair. Many members will remember that I presented a very similar proposal back in November at the last meeting. You'll notice much of this actually hasn't changed. What we've done here is we've completed the consultation. As a statutorily, we needed a consultation before we brought forward, so we can actually fully confirm the figure of the saving. So you'll see that we're looking at doing a 50,000 saving in year one, and 50,000, and then the 50,000 subsequently in year two. I would like to point out, I know members previously had the concern about the impact this would have on residents. I'd like to reiterate again, Thurrock, Thurrock's demographically, in terms of those who actually pay for care, is very, very low. And then on top of that, those who in both, I can give you the figure on the top of my head. Currently, that is for those who receive community care, we're the 7th lowest unitary authority, with only 15% paying for full cost for paying for care. That includes both full cost and contributions, and actually 13% in those in residential care. That means when we actually extrapolate the data of actually looking how many residents this then affects going forward for assisted technology, that's about 18% of those who actually use assisted technology for this proposal. What we're doing is definitely for residents, we're not charging. It's not allowed that we charge for items under £1,000, but instead this is the service to connect to the alarm response centre, which then alerts family and friends. Again, I'd like to reiterate and relay the concerns. This will be means tested. Not everyone pays, and that's why it goes back to that. Only 18% of those would actually be asked. It may even be a contribution. It may not be the full cost recovery. But this is a matter we've gone out to consultation, and of course, I think it's one of those. No one wants to take away services that are free, but there is as you'd expect, some of those respondents were quite negative, knowing that the service they've had is no longer. But it's really every single one is means tested. There will be a financial assessment back to this, so it allays residents' fears. Only those who can pay will be expected to pay. Those who cannot will be protected, and they will not be paying for that response. Of course, we'll be looking at helping and assisting residents at other alternatives if they do decide not to pay the charge. That could mean use of actually talking about other technology, for either for epilepsy and for falls. There is other options that doesn't go through our alarm response unit to actually detect that. There could actually instead be other bits of assistive technology that go straight to alert family and friends instead of having us as the intermediary. What we're looking for is just to make sure we keep a very good service. A recent consultation has shown that people who use the service think it's very good. We need to make sure we keep that up. And so in this regard, it's looking at that weekly charge to actually make sure we can cover the costs of the service for all the users. But of course, as not appreciate, very little has changed. We've now just brought forward the details from the consultation, but I'm very happy to take questions from the floor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cockshaw. I'm going to go first to the Chair of Health and Wellbeing, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. I'm kind of surprised we're even looking at it, I'll be honest with you, because it's actually a small amount of money but has a significant impact. And I'm really wondering if we could be just been talking very creatively about how we can fundraise using parks and things like that. When we're only talking about £50,000, why can we just keep it? The council spend on social care is far lower than the national average, and that's success. That is success. It's around about 33%, if I'm correct, and the average is about 45, 47%. The most vulnerable people don't have a great deal of money. I know you talked about means testing, and I kind of want to touch on a question, and maybe it's my own naivety, and I apologise to Ian and the Chair and yourself, George, in the sense, what is the IMG for Thurrock?
That's a very complicated question to try and answer here. It depends on different care groups and it depends on different ages as well. There's a threshold of 23,250 in terms of assets before you start to pay. In terms of income, then there's a quite complex calculations undertaken that takes into account people's essential living needs, so things like their rental, their mortgage costs, their food, their heating. And then there are a series of bandings, as I say, depending on circumstance. On minimum income guarantee, the council pays an additional 25% on top of that. So we are more generous in allowing people to keep more of their money. But I can't just give you a single figure. It doesn't work like that.
Thank you, Ian. I'm concerned about the effect of people who won't want to pay. I know you touched on it, Councillor Cockshaw, but I really am concerned if people don't pay, what risk assessments we put in place to ensure people aren't safe, because there are some people that won't pay this.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. I completely agree. There is Thurrock with Champion being quite preventative in how we deal with social care, making sure that we actually get involved earlier and try and before costs spiral out. I would just like to touch on the point. I know when you say saving small, I know other local authorities across the country do charge for this system already. We've touched base with Leeds, who charge, to actually have interaction with them to see how much they would they charge a variable rate. And their advice to us was you need to make sure the charge isn't excessive to actually deter people for that very reason. That's why part of this is actually looking at if residents, going back to that means testing, we are looking at those who, if there's a really high risk, then there is that conversation to be had, whether or not it's, do we keep going down the route of pendant alarms that go through, for example, just take that out of my head, who go for our alarm response centre, or does that actually, is there another alternative that can actually be on offer? I pick one, smartwatches, for example. Not all residents are going to use that, and that may be far out for some, but that then directly connects people to their family rather than through the council. There is a similar thing, I can't name the same item for those with epilepsy or with other falls, But it's really important we do have that idea that those who can pay will be asked to, but it's actually making sure we have that conversation, we identify, we know how many people who will this actually affect. It's working with those actually to identify, making sure they are fully understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to bring forward.
Okay, so you go through a risk assessment process, I assume, when you're making an assessment for this.
Under my interpretation of that is yes, we're making sure we are actually looking at, there is that idea that there's a part of other services we ask contributions to, but there is always going to be that conversation. If it's unable to happen, we'll try to look at reasonable alternatives and identify alternatives for residents to actually make sure they keep continuing getting the service they need.
And are they cost effective compared to the charge?
Sorry, could you...
Are they cost effective compared to the charge? If you're looking at alternatives, there's going to be a cost.
So the alternatives we would look at would, as Councillor Coxwell said, would be perhaps using a smartwatch and rather than connecting to the call centre, there's other systems where you can connect to family members, etc., etc. But ultimately, adult social care, as you know, isn't funded for everyone. It is means tested. So, I mean, the same question would apply for home care. We have people who are not eligible for free home care who we assess as needing it, but choose not to have it, and ultimately we can't force people to take services if they don't want to pay for them. Yeah, people have a right to make decisions which we may not agree with as sentient adults.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Polly, as Vice Chair, have you got any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I welcome that response, actually, because all too often we have dementia patients that are just provided with a cord or a button that do not have cognitive skills enough to be able to use it. So I think this is an opportunity to review the service and make sure that the more vulnerable are perhaps getting a system that works better for them, because that's quite often the case that, you know, these false buttons are hanging up on the bedstead or things of that ilk. As regards to charging to the vulnerable residents, I'm a little bit with Councillor Hooper on this. Economy of scale, the service that is used by residents is really important for people that have falls and things of that nature. So I'm comforted by the fact that you've looked into it so deep, that there's been a real robust review of that service. So that, in that respect, that gives me comfort. Thank you.
Chair, can I just say that when we talk about, it really goes back to that, those who receive free care already will not pay the charge. I really want to hammer that point home to allay the fear there. What the charge is, obviously, for any equipment provided under £1,000, the equipment is provided for free. The charge is only is levied just for the connection to our alarm receiving centre, rather than the technology itself. We're not charging people to buy their pendant alarm. We're charging for the ongoing running cost of running the 24-hour service 7 days a week. The charge in particular wouldn't be levied then for every bit of technology, nor is it levied for every different person in a household. If there are 2 people in a household, the charge that we're looking at is actually it would only be one charge for all of the technology they receive in that house that connects to the alarm receiving centre. So it's not that where some local authorities will charge per item, they may charge per person. They may so actually, in what we're trying to do we're not trying to be excessive of just we want to try and recover for that cost against the residents and put those at harm. We realise the service is very, 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 very key for vulnerable residents. And it's making sure that the way we manage it and actually continue the service running at a good standard, that we do actually try to relieve the financial pressure that the service presents. I think when, as we say, we need to be, it needs to be very delicately done, and it is a change. That previously Thurrock did charge at one point, it stopped charging, and now we've investigated looking at it again. But it is the most, as you see, we've brought this back because we've gone out to the consultation, and we're still going to do that. Of course, the charge will if the impact is very significant and you see a large drop-off, then the service, it needs to be reviewed. And there is that, it's making sure, if we levy the charge, there is always the opportunity to go back and re-look at, actually, is that the right level of charge? And or do we go back and re-evaluate that? But I think we've got to be serious about looking at how do we make sure our social care services continue to be good standard. And obviously the financial pressures of that are always going to grow. And I think that for those who can pay or contribute, may not be to contribute to the service, I think it's a step to make sure that we actually do support the service to keep it in the standard it is. But we need to, at the same time, protect the most vulnerable.
No, sorry. Oh, apologies, Councillor. That's a fair point. Right. Next, Councillor Tandy, please.
Yeah, have you got a figure of what the charges would be, average?
Yes, no, so we're looking at a £5 a week charge.
Okay, Councillor. Yeah, Councillor Fish, please.
Given the way the discussion's gone on this item, the complexities of it, the need for risk assessments, impact assessments, I think Councillor Hooper has a point when he says, is it worth making £50,000 worth of saving? And what other savings were considered and rejected so that this one was put forward?
Thank you, Councillor Fish. I think we've tried, I know Ian and officers have tried really hard to try and identify, making sure that services where we've done and championed in Thurrock, some of the services we do provide do not fall under in terms of its statutory interpretation. We provide, like local area coordinators do fantastic work, and it's making sure those are the frontline services day to day, that we do not start looking at trying to cut corners there. Whereas other local authorities do charge for this service, and we're trying to, it's balancing a very fine act. I appreciate it. Look, it's only a small figure, but it's 50,000 nonetheless. We've got to try. As we've said straight away for the 18.2, we've had to put everything on the table. We've had to have the tough conversations and make that decision of whether or not do we try to look at charging policy for assistive technology, or do we start to, from day one, try to avoid hitting frontline services? We're balancing a very fine act with demand on the service in terms of the financial demand is growing. We're having to look at the cost increase of the day-to-day services just because of general inflation, the fact staff retention is, we're struggling with staffing levels, the demand and the workforce on our staff is even higher. I will pass over to Ian if there was anything I've really missed, but I think we're trying to, as I say, it's that balancing line of actually looking at what can we reasonably expect and what can we reasonably ask. I know that the looking at charging policy went to HOSC in November 2022 and is due back very soon from the report subsequently from that. So there's the opportunity to HOSC to actually get into the teeth of this. I appreciate it's after the decision has both been made at full council and would have been made at cabinet, but that there is that further opportunity at HOSC to actually get into that full report. And I know Councillor Hooper will be receiving that very soon for the committee.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So and thank you for the detailed answer. Before I move on, I'm aware that we're moving to the time that the sort of natural close of the meeting, so I'm going to propose that we suspend standing orders initially to take us through to 10:30 and see where we go from there. I'd like consent. I mean, I only have to ask members of the corporate committee, but I'd like to seek consensus from all of us who are sat here. Is that okay with people? Yeah, agreed. And I'm also going to just take decision to just have a very quick, like 5-minute break. Okay? No one's going to disagree with that, so. Sorry, back at 9:25. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you. She has the habit of laughing when I speak. But as I was saying, Chair, the council is a landlord, and it's well known that we are reviewing our commercial rents with the aim of increasing income. That figure that we see there, £182,000, is presented as a saving. It is, of course, additional income above and beyond the collective amount that we already receive in commercial rents. The £182,000 is obviously a lot less than the figure that was presented to this committee in November. There's a number of reasons for that. I can't lean into it because it's not the same one as you. It doesn't. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. The £182,000 is a lot less than the figure that was presented in November. There's a number of reasons for that. One of the main reasons is some of the leases that we were anticipating renewing in the next budget cycle have actually already been renewed, so that income has been realised this year, and of course we can't unfortunately account for that income twice. In other cases, assets that we were anticipating retaining and receiving an income from will actually be disposed of as part of the asset review. So I don't think there's a lot more to say other than the £182,000 is additional income. It's not a saving. That's on top of the additional income which we've already generated this year, which is in excess of £500,000. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. I'm going to go firstly to Councillor Spillman as Chair of PTR.
There's obviously a very simple proposal. Can you give some examples of where we are disposing that we weren't going? I'm just asking that because I have to ask something, to be honest. Are there examples of where we were looking at saving and we're now disposing? Can you just give us some context around that?
Thank you, Chair. They're relatively small in number. I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't think this is the right committee to talk about specific commercial sites. There is an assets disposal list which is now public. They're on there. There's none that are going to be, well, there's no good reason why they shouldn't be made public and for members to see what they are. But I don't want to discuss specific sites in this committee, and that will change anyway. I mean, the thing to remember about this figure is it is always going to be quite fluid because we're negotiating with tenants and we can't guarantee what the outcome of some of these reviews, some of these negotiations will be. So it's always going to be a fluid figure, and there might well be assets that we're anticipating a rental income from, which in the next year we will decide to dispose of. But as I say, the details of that will be on the asset disposal list.
Thank you. Councillor Spillman, would you like to? No? Okay. Anyone else from PTR first before I give over to the floor? No? Anyone? Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Councillor Maney. Could you just sort of like give a guarantee that we will be looking at leases based on those that are actually in there? For example, if we've got a voluntary sector that's actually in that particular premises, or as we've had before, nursery, would that be done on a needs basis based on what that actual business in there can currently afford?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Watson. As I said, these are primarily commercial rents. They're not charitable rents. They're not rents that are paid by community interest groups. I think the leader spoke to a question at last full council when he was very clear that we need to look at community interest groups, groups that are providing a service to the community differently from those which are purely commercial concerns. I'm keen to make sure we have that approach. We shouldn't treat all organisations the same. So going forward, we will look at individual organisations, and where they are charitable, where they are a community group, they should be dealt with very differently. And the sole focus shouldn't be on how much money we can get, but are they supporting the objectives of the council? And I certainly think that should be factored into negotiations when we're looking at rent reviews.
Carry on, Councillor Watson.
Can we also add into that, please, Councillor Maney, the SMEs, the small businesses that are commercially, the one-man bands as well, that take like a small unit. Can we also add into reflecting that within their rent agreements as well, please?
Theoretically, we can. We can do what we like. For me, I think we have to be realistic. We need to get best value. We know we have a duty to make sure we realise the maximum income when it's a commercial organisation we're dealing with. If that was that, so in answer to your question, theoretically yes, but from my perspective, when you're dealing with purely a business that's operating on a commercial basis, likewise we have to operate on a commercial basis, and that does mean charging market rent. Small businesses don't have to choose us to be their landlord. They can choose somebody in the private market, but they will be paying a commercial rate there too. So I think it's important that we keep up with commercial rates.
I think we could probably caveat something like a start-up business that's just going in as well, and have a look at, if we want to promote economic development within our own borough, for our SMEs that we would like to bring on as well, not just the big commercial businesses. I think there is a real opportunity there to actually like reevaluate the rent. I'm not saying at full market rents, but I'm not saying at a peppercorn either. And I think there should be a sliding scale on how we can achieve that. And that will be really good to promote our residents to actually start up businesses.
I don't think there's a question there. It was just an observation. I'm sure it's something that we can take forward and consider.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morris Cook. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Brilliant. Thank you for that. Any other member of that committee? No. Okay. Okay. Anyone from the floor at all? Gone. Oh. Just on the deaf. There you go.
Can the portfolio holder advise us with the commercial rates? Obviously, retail sector especially has had quite a difficult time, and we as a landlord, we do own quite a few shops and some in our ward. I just wonder if with the retail units, along the lines of Councillor Watson's questions, obviously it's more of a benefit for us as a landlord to have those units used and occupied. Are we giving some consideration to that to create vibrancy in our high street properties? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I do have to come back to, for me personally, I think we have to be guided by the market. I think once you start adding caveats, we've already heard two suggestions. Where do you draw the line? Oh, can we have a caveat for this? We know the council's financial position. We know specifically we've been tasked with maximising additional income from rents. And I think there is always some flexibility. We have to be mindful that we are here to serve the community. We're not just a hard-nosed business. We are here to take care of our communities. But we have to be guided by the fact we have to maximise rental income, and that means charging a fair rent, which is the market rent. So again, the answer to your question is theoretically yes, of course we can look at it, but where do you stop adding caveats? I'm keen that we have a fair approach, but ultimately we're guided by what the market says is the proper rent.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. And I really appreciate all your answers. Thank you very much. The next person we're moving on to now is Councillor Deb Arnold, who will be talking us through her... I apologise, that's what it says on here, but I'll defer to Councillor Snell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll cover most of it, but I will refer to Councillor Arnold with regard to contact management. Well, I'll do my bits first. So we're talking about transformational change, communications and governments. You can see there's a 4.456 million saving in total. Councillor Morris-Cook will be pleased to see that the corporate services is the 1.877 million, which is part of what she was referring to earlier. And we have a workforce planning agency spend save of 2.059 million. On the corporate services, I can give you, if you would like, a rundown of which directorates we're saving that across. But I mean, it's basically across HR, finance, legal and government's place, and adults and children's, in essence. And that's pretty much that for that. And I shall refer to Deb with regard to contact management.
Thank you, Chair. You'll remember from the previous meeting that the contact management project, it's got two streams to it, the Voice AI and the CRM, the Customer Relation Management System. You'll see that there's a change, that the original saving was going to be 977 in 23-24. And what we've done is, as officers have got to grips with procurement and timelines on the projects, there's a realisation that the Voice AI is going to be easier to roll out and can be realised in 23-24, hence the reduction to the 520 saving and the 457 being deferred to 24-25 because the contact relation management system is far more complex and the procurement and the savings was always going to be over several years. So it's because, I mean, we all know how council processes can take time with procurement, tendering, agreements. It's had to move into that following year. But all of that 457 has been mitigated, and that was talked about originally. I can go back over that if you need me to, but...
Only if a member asks. Thank you very much. So, firstly, members of corporate overview and scrutiny, if anyone has any questions for either Councillor Arnold or Councillor Snell, if you could just indicate which councillor you'd like to answer. Councillor Morris-Cook.
So I really refer back to the question I asked before about, and I do believe it was 600,000 that was down for HR transformation, that there had been a business case by PwC which hadn't been agreed, and it was going to be subject to review. And then it was then up, there was going to be a new business case brought forward because they were going to look into it. Is there a new business case, or are we just keeping, hopefully, that HR is going to save, what I'm sure the figure was around 600,000.
Yeah. So I think, in essence, what we have is two separate tranches of savings. If we take the workforce planning and agency spend, so I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit, but well, that's rolled into the corporate services. So that's part of that. So I mean, the total HR saving is 1.136 million. So that incorporates the saving you're referring to. It
does.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And there is a business case.
Yes.
Okay. And then there is one for the contact management. You've said that the voice automation is ready to go. Have we actually procured the equipment? Because if we haven't, for that to be going in 4 to 6 weeks, it's not really going to happen, is it? Because as you said yourself, procurement in a local authority takes forever.
What I actually said was that the Voice AI was easier to roll out. I didn't say it had been rolled out or was about to be. It's part of a 5-year programme, so that part of it is going to be easier to procure and roll out. So that will be in that 23-24. Sorry, 24-25, what am I saying?
But sorry, I
23,
thought you
24.
said that that was the 520, the voice AI. You said that was easier to do, and that was the 520.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
you're now saying that you haven't procured the equipment to do that as yet.
Procurement's taking place, isn't it? Yeah, because it's an operational thing with the procurement, so I'm not actually sure how far through the procurement process we are.
But shouldn't we know that?
Should we ask Dr. Smith?
Okay. Just to clarify, the reason that the reduction in the first year's savings has gone down from the 900 to the 520 is because we can only realise the saving for part of the year because of the consequence of doing the procurement for the technology that we need to displace manual systems. So the 520,000 is a part year saving because it'll only be implemented and therefore take the reductions in staffing out part through the year. So the procurement is happening in the first part of the financial year in order to make the savings for the second part of the financial year.
That makes more sense, because my understanding from what Councillor Arnold said was the AI was easier to do because the CRM was going to be a lot more complex, and that was going to be the 400 and something for the following year. So that's not the case. It's right. I understand from what you explained.
So what Councillor Arnold, if I may, on Councillor Arnold's, what she was referring to is once we have the AI system, it's easier to roll out. So than the CRM, which will have to be rolled out over multiple years because it's more complex to do. It also engages much more of the organisation in the process. So the first year, once we have the system, will be easier to deploy, and therefore we can get part year savings on the AA once it's been procured.
That makes more sense, thank you. And what's your confidence level that you will be able to procure this and get this installed into the council to achieve 520,000, in which won't be a full year?
Our confidence level is high on this. That's why we've pared it down from the 900, recognising that when we timetabled it all out to deliver the procurement, then to implement it, and then to release the savings as a consequence. When we modelled that out, we felt that we were much more cautious about what we could deliver in 1 year. So we've gone for the 520. So I'm confident we can do that.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your questions. Who else? Anyone else like to? No? Oh. Councillor Polly.
So if I could just go back to the AI technology, obviously with the timescales that has just been described, could I be optimistic and say there could possibly be an even more saving of scale, because as AI and technology improves, the costings that we're looking at now for the procurement of it could be reduced because of the economy of scale and the advances in technology?
Hi, thank you for the question. Yeah, we are being very prudent. So the optimistic view would be that yes, there is more there, and it's been based on, because obviously as more AI comes in, there'll be a release of FTE, and so we're basing that on quite a small number, but the potential is larger. But I think we need to be cautious. I know we want to be optimistic about, as Councillor Morris-Cook was saying earlier, about we've got the 18.2 million, should we be looking for 23? But I think because this is new, we need to be cautious and we need to do it properly and correctly.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you both for your answers. Slide 15, the scrutiny additional saving proposals, and slide 16, 2024 to 25 proposed further savings, are going to be taken on together by Councillor Snell. And the questions will be open to all on the floor, regardless of committee membership. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, of course.
Yep, I think, Chair, we actually covered the majority of this earlier in the piece tonight. So I don't propose to go over most of that unless somebody would like me to. I think on the next slide on, please, Jenny. Yeah, I think that we've spoken about the hardship fund reduction. We've spoken about the environment. I think the only thing we haven't really spoken about is the intervention reduction, and that's just a reduction in the intervention fees. There's a fund for that which we're not using as much of, so that's the 200,000. But I don't think there's much more I can say that hasn't been said earlier. But open for questions.
Who was first out of both? Councillor Morris Cook, please, and then I'll go to Councillor John Kent.
Age before beauty.
Is that minuted, Councillor Morris Cook?
No. Thank you. Absolutely agree with you. There's just two points, one for you and one actually for Councillor Jeffries. So I understand the gap is the 1.7. My concern is for the following year, by not having it this year, you won't have it on the base. So in effect, going forward, it's going to constantly have a 1.7 gap. Does that make sense? It's even more so if any of them, say for instance, the hardship fund is accepted and goes through, that would be classed as a one-off because it would come out the budget. It wouldn't be a run rate improvement. So in effect, you would have to find that money again on top of the, it's like if you get a pay rise, say you're on, I don't know, £10,000 and everyone else gets a pay rise, it goes on their salary, you don't, you get a one-off payment of £500. So the following year, when you get to go to have your pay rise, you've only got £10,000 again. You haven't got, like everybody else, 10,500. So you're at a disadvantage. So by having the gap now, going forward, the base next year will be adrift by 1.7 as to what the proposal was originally. So it's going to put further pressures on. Does that make sense? Stephen's sort of nodding at me.
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
It's just, it's something else to take into consideration, isn't it?
I'll leave Steve to answer that.
Just to follow that up, I totally understand what you're saying. The reality is the council will find 1.7 million of recurrent savings, because the savings up there are recurrent. You find another 869 in the next month or so, and then it's all taken out of the base, so you don't have to find it again because you've taken it out once, and then it's a recurrent saving. So the problem you're referring to shouldn't arise as long as the council finds that total sum in the next few weeks. And what's that? Yeah, the recurrent savings. Take a budget out, you don't put it back in, it's out every year thereafter.
Thank you, Councillor Morris Cook. Did say two.
I did, and it'll be really quick. I see there's 53,000 in there from open spaces and parks. What was that, Councillor Jeffries? Sorry, in disrespectful there.
So these are original savings that we were proposing for 25-26, and what we've done,
pulled it forward.
and we've pulled them forward into this financial year. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Kent.
I just want to pursue this 1.7 million a little further if I can. I think the first thing to say is we of course welcome the fact that council tax won't be going up by 10%. Every little helps, as they say. But if we take 1.7 million that we're foregoing for the next 5 years, that's 8.5 million. That 1.7 coming off the base, have you calculated on a 5% increase what the 5-year effect of that is?
Basically, it's 1.7 for 5 years, John, if that's what you're getting at. So we take it out and then it stops out for 5 years, or ad infinitum.
No. By foregoing £1.7 million from the council tax base, 5% increase next year is 5% of 100 minus 1.7, isn't it? What will the 5-year impact of that be?
Basically, 1.7 million plus the extra 5% increase, so it'll be about 85 grand in the first year, so 585s, roughly speaking. I'd have to check you the figure exactly. So about 400 grand over the 5 years, yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood the question, John.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Maldoni.
Thank you. Can I ask what the take-up rate for the council tax hardship fund was this year? Have we spent all that money? Have we needed all has the demand be there basically, or is it's just been?
Councillor Snelfin, can you answer that one? Or? Well, I'm going to ask the
It's
around portfolio holder, if that's okay, Councillor.
I think it's around about the 500, just over the 500,000 range. But I think the problem with knowing the total amount is because it's difficult to allocate in one hit. So we're doing tranches of allocation. So that figure might change when the final allocations are done.
So this is money that's been utilised by people in hardship. How does this budget saving equate with the promise to protect the vulnerable first when we look at budget savings, and what other things have been considered to provide the funding gap, mitigation for the funding gap that you've created in the last few weeks?
I think that there appears that there's two questions there. I think we've covered the funding gap one quite well, but what I would add further to that is that the funding gap is nothing new to Thurrock Council. Funding gaps are what happen every single year where we don't take the full amount of council tax. And parties of all stripe have been guilty down the years of not taking the full allocation of council tax available, and in some instances taking no council tax. So this isn't a new problem for Thurrock, and it's one that going forward we need to really have a good look at ourselves about. So I think for this particular one, with understanding that people have been hit with quite a heavy council tax rise last year, we wanted to do some mitigation this year in the full belief that we could mitigate those costs, that we believe we can. So I think that pretty much covers that question. In terms of protecting the vulnerable, of course, we'll always protect the vulnerable where we can. But of course, one of the problems with the hardship fund is that from what I've been told anecdotally, it's pretty much, if you ring up and say you're having trouble, you've got some sort of a payment, there didn't seem to be any checks going on. So that's an issue that we consider is not useful going forward. So we've already spoke earlier about the government funding which may come forward. We know that there's no guarantee of that yet. We are quite hopeful that they will come forward, but we are waiting to see.
So,
did you, Councillor Maldoni, then Councillor John Kent after?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, we're moving from a situation where you're kind of having a non-means tested reduction for residents who may, there'll be residents who would be more able to pay higher council tax than others. And then we're reducing the hardship fund. I think this argument of it hasn't been properly administered in the past is not an argument to get rid of it. I don't accept that is a good argument for getting rid of it. And I really would like to have seen a bit, that there's evidence that you've looked in other places rather than removing a hardship fund that's there to protect our most vulnerable residents at a time with a cost of living crisis and extra burden on residents because of the financial state of the council.
I think we are where we are with this, and I think, as you well know, we will take the council tax hardship as we do anyway on a case-by-case basis as they occur. But ultimately, it's not a statutory requirement that we do this. Now, if we were able to put the council tax up by 15% to create the additional, to create something like that, then that's something maybe we could look at then. But we're not in that position this year. So, we can only, as Councillor Manny referred to earlier, statutory is what we're about. And, of course, we will look after vulnerable people as and when they come to the council, but it will be on a case-by-case basis going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Kent.
Sorry, I just want to pursue this further, that we are a council that is kind of, to all intents and purposes, bankrupt, and yet the portfolio holder tells us that we're issuing money to people pretty much in answer to a phone call. That can't be right, and if it is right, then it's an absolute scandal. Could you just tell me what the process is for somebody accessing support from the hardship fund? It can't be you phone up and you get a cheque, surely.
Councillor Snell.
I did say it was anecdotally. I don't know the process, what you would have to go through to get the money, but I shall find out and I shall let you know.
Thank you. Is it no one else before you? Join the queue, Councillor.
I know your voice, though.
Councillor Watson, please.
Sorry. I am going to talk about the hardship fund because I'm more at Stephen than I am at the portfolio. So, yes, it is a government initiative. Yes, it is a government fund. Or but hold on, Val. But it makes up of the housing support fund. That wasn't announced in the budget, and we don't know if it's going to come forward in the budget, which means that that housing support fund also has a massive knock-on effect to free school meals and our schools, and it has an impact there, and it has an emergency assistance scheme that sits in there to help people on low income, and we are about to remove £616, so all of that might go, plus our contribution of 616. I don't see the rationale why we're moving it. If all of our vulnerables, if we don't get the grant, actually won't have anything anyway, and this might be their only source of actually getting something. So I just want to put that on the table, Stephen, that I honestly get what you're saying, but this means our most vulnerable residents and our most vulnerable children through the housing support fund, which this means part of, will not receive anything, but yet we can help at least 616,000 of it. Is it any other way?
Councillor Snell.
There could be other ways, but it will mean cutting more services elsewhere. I mean, don't forget that was a one-off. What we did last year, a one-off. We was allowed to increase council tax by the rate we did, on the proviso that we created that fund. But that was a one-hit deal, and we've done that. There's no statutory requirement for us to do it. It didn't happen before from us, and there's no proviso for us to do it again this year. So, we are where we are. As Councillor Kent quite rightly says, we are effectively running a bankrupt authority. That is the fact. And we will do our statutory duty, of course we will. And we will, as I said before, deal with people on a case-by-case basis as they approach the council if they do fall into hardship. But at this moment in time, we can't commit to a £616,000 hardship fund.
So is the 616,000 completely used?
As I said earlier, in my previous answer, is that it's around 530-ish thousand that has been allocated so far. It's done in tranches, so we don't know what the final figure is going to be. But you can tell by that figure that the majority of it has been used. Yes.
Thank you, councillors. So, unless anyone else, this brings us to item 4 completed, and the recommendations are for members of the corporate committee to agree on. Democratic services, do I need to read each one aloud? Okay. So, recommendation 1.1, that the committee act as a critical friend in objectively assessing the strengths and weaknesses of the proposals. Agreed? Good, yeah, a bit more enthusiasm, please. That the committee, not that much, but that the committee ask members or directors for any explanation or information needed to better understand the proposals. Agreed. that the committee consider the community and equality impact assessments and summaries of the public engagement activities.
One thing I would say, has there been an equality impact assessment done for the removal of the 616,000 hardship fund? Has there been? Because I didn't see one. So if there hasn't been, I can't agree to that.
That's a fair comment. I'll ask the portfolio holder.
I'm advised that that's still being worked on as we speak.
So I can't agree. I can't comment on that then.
Okay.
And it would be, I think it's really useful to actually have that circulated to members when that comes out, please. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, Councillor Muldowney, I'm only going to ask for people who are on the committee itself, because really it's our recommendations, the corporate committee. So respectfully, I'm good. I can't see it, but we're only talking about the recommendations at this stage. So, yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Morris Cook. Recommendation 1.3, I can't support, unless any other member of the corporate committee want to comment on that. Councillor John Kent?
I don't think it's something that you can kind of disagree with. We've been asked to consider. I think we just need to reword it to say that we're considering those impact assessments that were available at the meeting.
Yeah, that's a fair form of wording. Yeah, thank you. That the committee consider the remainder of the fees and charges proposal. I think this needs to be reworded because in line of what was agreed earlier in the meeting about the commentaries coming through and the rationales. So if we could have that reworded to say that the fees and charges will be distributed with commentaries so that members can be informed as to the rationale behind the changes. Sorry, in that I missed 1.4. Forgive me, I'll go back to that. That the committee make recommendations to officers to improve the proposals. Agreed. 1.5 to be reworded in light of the officer commentaries to come out. And 1.6, that the committee provide commentary and recommendations, including any alternative options to Cabinet to consider when making decisions. Agreed. I'm assuming, yes. Okay, thank you. That's item 4. We now move on to item 5. Which corresponds with slides 17 and 19 of the revenue budget for 2024-25. And I ask Stephen Mayer to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This brings together the total budget proposals and just highlights the main elements. Obviously, the main issue has been the paper that we've previously been through. So the council tax increase is, as you know, 7.99%. That is the proposal. Councillor Snell's already mentioned that we have built contingencies in there, picking up members' earlier concerns about delivering the whole 18.2 million. And there is an increase in costs of the 24.4, which is set out for you on that slide there and appears in the report. The 24.4 comes from a number of issues. So 23-24, starting at the left-hand side of that, there are pressures within the 23-24 budget. Those are recurrent pressures, therefore you have to allow for them in your 24-25 budget or you start with a problem. An example of what's in the 5 million is the council has previously capitalised costs that it shouldn't do, e.g. licences, ICT work, etc. That work needs to continue, therefore it has to come out of the revenue budget. So that's an element of that. Pay inflation and other increases is what you would expect. There is a pay award each year, contract prices go up, energy prices, etc. Then the next 3 are particular demand pressures within, mostly in the worlds of adults and children's services. The colleagues will be able to speak much more eloquently than I without the usual placements, etc. pressures that you face. The one next to the end at the right is where your contingency is. In essence, that's 2 items. you've 3.1 million as a general contingency against not achieving the 18 million, and there is 3.5 million in there for the council to invest in its core functions, such as a PMO, given the level of savings that you are trying to achieve. That will be an eminently sensible thing to do. Personally, I would recommend you absolutely do not reduce that for a year or so until you get into the swing of delivering the savings of this magnitude. It might be something you consider in future years. Your reserves will go up because there is one-off income coming in from the investments that we've now just sold. But nonetheless, my personal view is, and you'll see it in the Section 25 report, you need to increase your reserves further given the challenges that you face. And one check and challenge that's in there, you'll see the bullet at the bottom. While the monies will be in the budget for growth, what we are recommending to Cabinet is that a further business plan is brought forward by colleagues in services if they want to actually utilise it. That shouldn't be a problem because it wouldn't be there if colleagues didn't feel they needed it, but it gives you an extra check and challenge before that takes place. Thank you, Jenny. Therefore, in total funding, your control goes up by 7.4. We split it out there for you. We mentioned the 24.4 on the previous slide. That is the transformation budget that we touched on previously. That's the sum that was left before this round's numbers that Councillor Snell has taken us through. So it will come down to about the 8 million that was mentioned previously. The 1.7 million we've recommended that you identify in total by the 22nd of March. The rationale for that, if anybody is wondering, is one, you don't want to do it in a few days. It's a big number. You don't want to let it drag. You need to get it done and ready to come back to your first scrutiny meeting in the new financial year. The big two numbers, which we will touch on in later slides, is because of your success in the sale of Toucan, CCLA, etc., then that we will start paying off debt. Therefore, your budgeted treasury and MRP costs will drop. And likewise, your capitalisation direction will drop. But I will pick that up again later on in the slides, Chair, if that's okay, so other issues with that.
Thank you. Any member like to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Muldowney, please.
So I thought I'd get this in at the right place. So in the last report and in this report, I note that Commissioners' comments to be added as an addendum prior to the meeting. I'm wondering, did I miss that? Because I'm not aware of receiving those. It would be good to hear what the Commissioner comments were.
Commissioner comments will be fed into the Cabinet papers. We've literally, all of us been working to this. They have all been received. I can't recall the exact comment that the Commissioners have made on this. There is nothing adverse in the Commissioners' comments, but they will be circulated as part of the Cabinet papers.
Okay, so not prior to the Cabinet meeting, not this meeting.
Yeah, the papers will go out in a day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other member wish to? Councillor John Kent.
So just two comments, really. The first is, you know, genuinely, I understand how difficult all of this is, but I'm still uncomfortable going into a budget setting council meeting in 2 weeks' time when there are around £1 million of savings not identified. So there's £1 million gap in the budget, and being asked to agree that budget on the kind of promise that, you know, we'll find it within the next few weeks. I just make that as a comment. I don't ask for anybody else to comment on it. I just it's uncomfortable for me. And the second thing is, you know, we concentrate all the time on hitting a savings target. You know, the savings target is now £20 million, and we're almost there. You know, well done, everybody. We then put council tax up by 8%, and still, in order to set a balanced budget, we have to go to government and ask for permission to count £68.6 million as capital and pay it off via MRP over a period of time. And I just think sometimes members lose sight of the gravity of the situation that we are still in. And, you know, it's later on in the agenda when we come to the medium-term financial plan, we are going to be in this position for years and years to come. And I just ask everybody to kind of remember that and focus on it when we're making our special pleading for we'd like a little bit more of this or we'd like a little bit more of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kent. Mr. Mayor?
If I may just comment, Councillor Kent, just to give yourself and members comfort, we previously modelled the council tax as a modelling exercise at 9.99. When it became known it was going to be 7.99, we reduced the modelling. We allowed for the saving that's in there already. Therefore, we factored the difference into your capitalisation direction request. So that the council will be setting a balanced budget, just to give you that comfort. If that then number then comes through, you clearly won't use that element of the capitalisation direction, and therefore you're not double counting. But just so you're comfortable, it will be a legal budget.
I was always comfortable that it would be a legal budget. I would expect nothing else. What I am uncomfortable about is the suggestion that we could almost use a capitalisation direction as a bit of flex to prevent us having to find savings. I just think that's dangerous, and I'm actually surprised that government, civil servants, would allow us to do that.
I'm not suggesting we use it as flakes. It is simply in the scale of the council's finances that you have referenced, which I totally agree with. Inevitably, you are going to end up with a number there. And the reality of the CD is it'll only become an actual when your accounts come in. So nobody's doing anything, I know you're not saying this, untoward.
Thank you. Any other member like to comment? Okay. So that means we move on to the recommendations. There's a lot here, so I will go through them, and if I could have agreement on them, please. So members are asked to comment on the following. The second tranche of savings as set out in the budget savings report elsewhere in this agenda. Agreed? Yeah, good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's nothing here. The 2024 to 25 budget to enable the council tax requirement for 24-25 to be set at 91.266 million as per section 5, a 7.99% increase on 23-24. Agreed? Yep. 1.3, the council tax resolution 20... No, yeah. Did I say... Oh, sorry, I meant agreed that we commented. Thank you. No, it's not panto season. No heckling from the back, please. The Council Tax Resolution 24-25, as set out in Appendix 2, which sets the following council tax precepts increases. The Police and Crime Commissioner has increased council tax for B and D property to 246.42 per annum, a 6% increase on 23-24. The Fire Authority has increased council tax for a Band D property to 82.62 per annum, a 3% increase on 23-24. You look, Councillor.
Sorry, I don't want to be pedantic, but is there a Fire Authority?
I thought it was incorporated.
It's now the Police, Crime and Fire Commissioner, isn't it? Is that just shorthand?
Yep. It's shorthand, is it? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. 1.4. The proposal for members to work with officers to identify 1.7 million in additional savings by the 22nd of March 24. Potential actions are presented in Table 18. Yeah. Not agreeing, just commented. The proposed 24-25 budget based on the estimated financial deficits be funded by a capitalisation direction of 68.6 million. The submission of business cases by services is required to secure approval to utilise budgets earmarked for contract inflation, use of contingencies and budgets earmarked for pressures, Section 10, Table 21, for approval by the Chief Financial Officer and the Finance Commissioner in conjunction with the portfolio holder for finance, human resources and payroll to allow in-year budget adjustments. We comment on the ones we've seen, yeah. 1.7, the submission of a spending plan by services is required before the newly announced additional grant funding for social care can be utilised, brackets 1.4 million. This will require approval by the Chief Financial Officer and the Finance Commissioner in conjunction with the portfolio holder for children and housing to allow in-year budget adjustments. We've had the opportunity to comment on it. 1.8, note the Council's estimated position on reserves as set out in section 13. Note the dedicated schools grant settlement for 24-25 and the Thurrock allocation of 53.3 million as set out in section 11. And ready for the finale. 1.10, note the continued use of measures to control expenditure as set out in section 14. Commented? Yeah. Okay. I'm just aware of time, and in order to finish the agenda, I propose that we suspend standing orders and for, I think, from an hour, or let's take it to 11:30 and to get these items done. What, now or in, well, we can have a, if you wish to, yeah, a 5-minute break. Yeah, okay. And thank you, if everyone could. Thank you. If we could all bring ourselves to order so we can get through this. I'm now going to ask, I'm bringing item 6, I'm going to ask Stephen Mayor to introduce the MTFS for 2024-25.
Thank you, Chair. This is the look forward, building on the revenue budget proposals for 24-25. So we are modelling that there will be increases of council tax of 4.99% in future years. Clearly, that will be decisions for members in the future. We're modelling quite prudent minimal changes in government funding, inflation for pay, but the other inflation reduces to 2% in 24-25. Clearly, you will be able to look at this in future years and make more up-to-date assumptions. The real issue in here is the next bullet, and we have a slide or two to follow on this, that your debt to revenue ratio is extremely high, as you would expect in 23-24, 138%. As the investments and the assets are removed, it will reduce to an estimated 34% by the end of 4-5, but still be at 25% by 28-29. And this refers back to members' previous comments. That is very high. The ratio should be, to be in the norm, less than 10%. So you are a long way off getting that there. Likewise, in the MTFS, we just repeat that growth requests will be subject to business cases. Thanks, Jamie. Picking up then on that penultimate bullet, there's quite a few figures in here, but there's 3 basic messages. So what that shows you is the opening budget for 3-4, the estimated movement, because these things fluctuate, and then the closing forecast. And running along the top, you've got your general fund debt, the cost of that debt, the MRP and the interest, the cost of the debt as a percentage of the revenue budget, and then your capitalisation direction. So on the opening position of the top row, you had a 1.3 billion general fund debt. Cost of debt of 155 million, over 105%, and a CD, capitalisation direction of 180 million. If you come down 3 rows to your 28-29 forecast, you'll see your general fund debt is forecast to drop to just over 300 million. Still a very big figure. Your cost of debt drops to 44.5. Cost of debt as a percentage of budget is at nearly 25%, and your CD is then at 24 million. So the row in bold shows that in virtually 1 year you will have made significant debt reductions, and a significant reduction in the cost of debt and the cost of debt as a percentage of budget, etc. So that is a good thing for the council to have done. However, you still end up a long way from where you need. Certainly.
Where you should be, you have got to reduce your cost of debt, looking at the penultimate row now, by a further 26.6 million, by a further 14.8% reduction in debt, and get your CD down by a further 24 million to hit that bottom row. So in effect, what that is telling you is you still have very significant debt. You are still spending far too much on it than most other councils and where you need to be, and you are still out of balance in 5 years' time by £24 million. The natural financial, speaking purely financial, consequence of that is more assets will need to be sold, more income will need to be brought in, more savings will need to be achieved. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jenny. Just to demonstrate the capitalisation direction for your information, because there's a technical change in here. So the 1042 at the right-hand side was the original estimate when this all began for Thurrock. You thought you would have a total capitalisation direction of just over £1 billion. The number below that, the 520, clearly it's reduced because you've been successful at selling assets, etc. Nonetheless, you still have a long way to go. That is £500 million of CD, which you will be paying interest and MRP on for a long time. The technical point, without getting too technical, if you look to the left-hand column under 22-23, you will see your original budgeted estimate for your capitalisation direction was 452. That's dropped to 40. We've taken a King's Council's opinion, who has given the opinion that the letter of the law says you cannot retrospectively go back and adjust your MRP. You have to push it forward. Hence, the 22-23 number turns out to be a lot less, but your future years are higher than we originally hoped they would be. And the real number to focus on is the second one in the 28-29 column. That is the 24 million capitalisation direction at the moment that you will still be asking for, which is not a balanced position. You have to get that down to nil, and you have to get your debt lower, otherwise you are paying a quarter of your budget on debt charges.
Thank you very much. Anyone like to speak on this? Okay. So, we move to the recommendations. It is recommended that the committee comment on the medium-term financial strategy, and in doing so, review the financial targets summarised in paragraph 1.3, the financial assumptions, deliverables, as summarised in paragraph 1.4 to 1.7. Yep.
Can I suggest, because we're not going to be able to comment on them, can we change that? It's recommended that we understand it or that we've listened to them. I think that's, I'm not sure what the other members think, but I would say that we've listened to them and we've had them presented to us.
Yeah, we can just say that it's noted, you know, because...
No, I can't use the word enough.
No, what word are you suggesting, Councillor?
I'm just saying that it's, you might say it more.
Again, it's one of these where we're asked to comment and we haven't commented. I think part of the reason is that it is utterly bleak. I mean, we've spoken before about capitalisation directions going on and on till to 28, 29. I just don't think, to be honest, there's anything new that we can say. I just think we all need to understand the gravity of the situation and the fact that this isn't something that's going to be kind of resolved next year or the year after. And, you know, I say in the kind of spirit of we all wanted to see the same thing, a change of government isn't going to resolve this. You know, whatever happens, we have to face up to the fact that we have to pay down our debts one way or t'other. And I guess the question for Mr. Mayor, now he's leaving, is your last comment was this is a forecast, so it's not a fact. You end up with a capitalisation direction of 24 million in 28-29 unless we do something different, was what you said. What can we do different?
Again, speaking purely financially, the options you've got, and I'm not trying to make a political point, is to push the council tax in future years higher than 4.99%. We've only modelled 4.99, so if you went for 9.99, that will be real extra income. You may have to consider going higher. You may have to consider going more than 1 year. Your 18.2 million drops down to 13 million in 3 years' time. You may have to keep it at 18.2 million. Capital assets, colleagues are working really hard, but we've got to push. Have we really reviewed everything? Do you really need every building that you've got? And there's more to it than just selling it. And fundamentally, those are your levers. Your investments were now down to what we call the tail. There's about 7% left. That will take time. It's really pushing harder on the things you've already got to do.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kent. So in terms of the recommendations, what were you suggesting, Councillor Morris-Cook?
So now we could probably say that the committee welcomed the report and, you know...
Remove comments and put welcome the report.
I don't know if we welcome it, do we? But
Well,
we're aware of it. You know, we've had it presented. We've considered it.
okay.
The committee have considered it.
Yeah, received and, yeah, received, yeah. Okay. I'm happy with that. Oh no, it's Councillor Polly as well. It's up to us, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So is that item 7? Yeah, 24 is just the title page. So yeah. Okay. So we now move on to item 7, the Capital Strategy Programme, 2024-25 to 2028-29. And again, I welcome Stephen Mayer.
Thank you, Chair. Just move on one, please, Jenny. So the capital programme is, the thrust of the capital programme is the council cannot borrow for the general fund unless it is refinancing debt. It cannot borrow to undertake new investments. Equally, if it did borrow, then it would incur further MRP, further interest, and the numbers you saw on the last slides will get even worse than they are at the moment. So what colleagues have done, all directors working with portfolio holders, have sought to see where they can reduce the capital schemes. And the main thing to note is the second bullet down there. We've got the general funded borrowing down to 4.9 million over 5 years. So that's an average clearly of $1 million a year. You will have capital receipts to finance that. It's very low. It's a good piece of work to reflect on that. There were some schemes that went on hold and we're just formalising that position now, and there were some that were not yet started, and likewise those are in there. What we also put in the report is various improvements in the financial management of the capital programme. The HRA I'll touch on in the next slide, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you very much. Would any member like to comment or ask any questions of Mr. Mayor? No? Okay. Now, the recommendations, I've just, because of other issues around the word agreement and stuff, I've just sought clarity. Anything that says approve in these recommendations is that full council will be asking us to approve. It doesn't mean tonight we're saying we approve of it. Okay, so just going to read the recommendations out, which there's, again, many here. So, Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee comments on the matters set out in the report prior to it being presented to Cabinet on the 22nd of February 2024 and Council on the 28th of February 2024. That's 1.1. I would suggest have comments. We haven't actually... No one's asked any questions, so it hasn't been considered, yeah. Okay. That the committee note that full council will be asked to agree the following. A, approve the revised capital strategy and 5-year capital programme for 24-25 to 28-29 as set out in this report. B, Approve that the capital projects bullet point currently on hold totalling 119 million, see Appendix 2, are not included in the capital programme and the associated borrowing of 62.9 million is not required. Next bullet point, the capital schemes that have not started totalling 3.3 million, see Appendix 4, are also formally confirmed as removed from the capital programme and the associated borrowing of 3.3 million is not required. Next bullet point, that schemes assessed and considered no longer necessary, totalling 60.1 million, see Appendix 5, are confirmed as removed from the capital programme and the associated borrowing of 56.5 million is not required. C, approve the proposed financing of the capital programme as set out in Appendix 3. D, delegate to the Interim Director of Finance, Section 5151, all decisions surrounding the financing of individual items of expenditure within the revised capital programme, in line with the overall capital programme as set out in Appendix 3, in a manner which achieves the most efficient use of the Council's resources. E, approve that any future changes to the capital programme should be approved by full council, whilst ensuring that external funding is able to be used in a timely manner, with any new borrowing requirements subject to Commissioner approval. And F, approve that the capital programme board review and receive updates on the action plans put in place to address the further improvements identified in Appendix 7, and to note progress on continued delivery of these improvements. I'm not rereading it all, so are we all okay, that noted? Yeah. Thank you, because I was worried if you weren't going to. So the final item, item 8, is the Housing Revenue Account 30-year business plan. And is it Mr. Wake will be speaking on this? Mr. Mayor? Sorry, I just saw your name there, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. This gives you the substance of the HRA business plan, and there are two other issues just to be aware of that link back to the previous item. So there's a 5-year programme there for the HRA with a surplus. It is in a more robust place than your general fund. As the third bullet shows, clearly 30 years is a long time, but this is a requirement that we're looking at over those periods. And likewise, we identify the key issues: inflation, capital spending, etc. Two things to be aware of. One goes back to the previous item. Likewise, the general fund, the HRA, at the moment, the council cannot borrow for. However, working with commissioners, we are in regular dialogue with DLUC about this. I can't speak for them, obviously. I think they are minded to support the council borrowing for the HRA. We have a paper that colleagues in housing have drawn together. Commissioners will be looking at in the next few days. That will go back in there. We cannot make a commitment. We are hopeful there will be a rounded, sensible approach to your borrowing on the HRA. When you see the Cabinet papers, there is a caveat in there, because if we don't get that, clearly matters will change. And we have been making representations to government on the right to buy receipts. My personal view on that is that is less likely to be positively received, but as long as you get the ability to borrow, you will be able to go forward and deliver your major capital schemes. But we will firm these up as matters come to a head. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody like to comment? No? So with the recommendations, I'm going to change the word comment to note, and I'm going to read all the recommendations for you. Okay. Recommendation 1.1. The committee is asked to note, not comment, note on the HRA revenue budget for 24-25, Table 1 and Appendix A. 1.2, note the HRA 5-year revenue budgets for 24-25 to 28-29, Table 1, Appendix A. 1.3, note the HRA 30-year revenue budget for 24-25 to 2053-54, Appendix B. 1.4, comment on the HRA 5-year capital programme for a total of 175.069 million, Table 3 and Appendix C. 1.5, note the 30-year capital strategy for 2024-25 to 2053-54, Appendix D. 1.6, note the draft HRA reserves and balances for the 5-year business plan, Appendix E. And ready for the last one? 1.7, note the submission of the 2 requests by the Secretary of State. The outcome of it will be reported to the Cabinet/Council. Can we all say we've noted it? Yes. Now, before anyone else can say anything, I bring the meeting to a close.
What about the work programme?